To our City Council meeting. Today is Monday, March 2nd, 2020. It's approximately 1 p.m. Before we have our Pledge of Allegiance, I'm going to ask if you please rise for a brief moment of silence as we reflect back on the brave men and women of the United States Armed Forces as they protect our interests around the globe, as well as the courageous men and women of the Las Cruces Police Department, Las Cruces Fire Department, as they keep our city safe 24/7, 365. Councilor Sorg, join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we're going to have Jennifer from our Communications Office introduce our Pet of the Week.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Jennifer Martinez with the City's Communications Office, and I'd like to introduce you to Simba, the brave kitty with a heart of a lion. This orange ball of fur is adventurous, curious, and loves to sing. Simba is in need of a home where he can be nurtured and raised to be the fine feline he is destined to be. You can meet Simba at the Animal Service Center of the MESILLA Valley, located at 3551 Baton Memorial West. Hours of operation are Monday through Friday, noon to 6 p.m., Saturday and Sunday, noon to 5 p.m. There are off-site locations and hours this weekend that include the Downtown Farmers Market on Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon, and Petco from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and then also Sunday at PetSmart at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Dogs in Las Cruces can only be tethered to a stationary object for no more than 2 hours in a 12-hour period, and can only be tethered to a running line, pulley, or trolley system for no more than 4 hours in a 12-hour period, and noncompliance could result in $500 in fines and up to 90 days in jail. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So if that cat can sing, I will take it. And I mean, really sing.
I'll see if we can arrange for that.
But if you're singing in your idea, then I'm just kidding. Okay, so now we have Councilor Sorg, who's going to make a few proclamations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll begin with the proclamation for the 10th Annual Las Cruces Arts Fair weekend. And so I'd like to have I almost said Councilor Smith. I got Mr. Greg Smith come down, and Dan Lair and Abel Garcia, please. Are they here? You just got me. Oh, okay. Very good, then. Whereas the arts are a source of pride in our community, and the Las Cruces Arts Fair on March 7th, 8th, and 9th of 2020 will be the 10th Annual Arts Fair in Las Cruces. And whereas featured artist Abel Garcia, originally from Tortugas and Las Cruces, is gaining recognition nationally and internationally for his art, and he will be actively showing his art in the show. And whereas connections honoring the culture and tradition of Tortugas Pueblo will be important elements in this 10th Annual Las Cruces Arts Fair. And whereas the mission of the Doña Ana Arts Council is envisioning a community where the arts thrive, and the Arts Council is actively pursuing the connections between a wider range of the arts with a broader spectrum of our community. And whereas the creative economy promotes opportunities in our region, and events such as the Las Cruces Arts Fair underscore the arts and culture of Las Cruces, home of New Mexico's newest and award-winning arts cultural district. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and the City Council of Las Cruces, New Mexico, do hereby proclaim Friday, March 7th, 2020 through Sunday, March 9th, 2020 as the 10th Annual Las Cruces Arts Fair weekend. And we encourage members of our community to enjoy the arts this weekend in Las Cruces. And that is signed by the Mayor and our City Clerk. Very good.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. You have a word or two?
Certainly. I believe we misstated the actual dates. It's the 6th, 7th, and 8th, but nonetheless, it is an exciting thing. We're honoring the work of Sally Cutter this time and this 10th anniversary, so please be sure to come out. It's $10 for all 3 days, and we will have Abel, who is, he's going to be doing an installation in Thailand shortly. He's been, his art is being shown and is located in a number of places throughout the United States, but he is adding international to his kudos. So please come out and enjoy, and certainly look at the connections to our history and our local culture. Thank you.
There you go. Oops, yes.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
And now, this is a proclamation for the National Peace Corps Week, and I would like to have everyone in the, everyone that was in the Peace Corps, please come forward here on the stage that have ever been in the Peace Corps. I'll have to work on that, yes.
Does that have the new logo? No.
What logo?
There's a new one now,
Oh, okay. This is old. This is 1961.
which is a better one.
Okay, very good. So the proclamation reads, whereas the Peace Corps has become an enduring symbol of the United States' commitment to encourage progress, create opportunity, and expand development in the grassroots level. And whereas since 1961, more than 235,000 Americans have served as Peace Corps volunteers in 141 different countries. And during the past 55 years, over 340 men and women from Las Cruces have responded to the United States call to join the Peace Corps. And whereas Peace Corps volunteers have made significant and lasting contributions around the world in agriculture, business development, information technology, education, and environment, as well as health and HIV/AIDS, have improved the lives of individuals and communities worldwide. And whereas Peace Corps volunteers have strengthened the ties of friendship and understanding between the people of the United States and those of other countries. And whereas Peace Corps volunteers, enriched by their experiences overseas, have brought their communities throughout the United States a deeper understanding of their cultures and traditions, thereby bringing a domestic dividend to our nation. And whereas the City of Las Cruces recognizes the achievements of the Peace Corps and honors its volunteers, past and present, and reaffirms the United States' commitment to helping people help themselves throughout the world. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of Las Cruces, New Mexico, do hereby proclaim the week of March 1st, 2020 through March 7th, 2020 as National Peace Corps Week throughout the City of Las Cruces, New Mexico. Signed by the Mayor and the City Clerk. Now, okay, very good. Now I would like to have each of the volunteers come and state your name, the country you served, the years you served, and what your sector, I got the name right. That's something new since I was in there. It was our job. Anyway, so each of you do that. Whoops.
Hi, my name is Gracia Nunez. I was in Panama from 2016 through 2018, and I was a conservation volunteer.
And my name is Dennis Nurse. I served in Kenya, East Africa, from 86 to 88, and I was a small business advisor.
My name is Larry Nichols. I served in the Peace Corps in Afghanistan. I was a school architect and also established the first architectural education program at the University of Kabul, Afghanistan.
Hi, my name is Kent Oldenburg. I served in Colombia, South America, 1961 to 63. the first group ever. It was a rural community development project.
Very good. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Eric Walkinshaw. I'm embarrassed to say this. I served in the South Pacific. Tough job, tough assignment. But as a rural development engineer, environmental engineer in Fiji Islands. And from 73 through 75.
Very good. Thank you. Before you all sit down, I'd like to get a photo. Is there somebody here that could take a photo with us in it? While we're waiting there, I will give you my, I'll give you my Peace Corps experience. I was a volunteer in Ghana, West Africa, 1970 to 1973. I was a teacher and in a teacher training college, and that is where I met my wife, who was also a volunteer, but she could not attend here today. Yeah, just so we're together.
There's a lot of women in the Peace Corps too.
Yeah. Outnumbered.
Ready? Go.
Thank you. Very good. I wanted that photo because there is a statewide organization in New Mexico. They're centered in Albuquerque, as you might guess, and they wanted a photograph of this. And so whoever took the photograph, could you email it to me? Okay, good. And I'll pass it on to them. One last word about the Peace Corps. Many of you know here that I returned to Ghana last year to visit the school and the country that I served in, and had a very interesting experience. And I'm going to claim credit for this. I was at this place in which it was an eco-lodge in which they had drinking glasses. These great drinking glasses were made out of, these could have been beer bottles, but they happened to be soda pop bottles. And the way you make a tumbler or drinking glass out of a bottle like that is you fill the bottle up with oil to the point where you want the glass, the height glass you want to have. And then you take a red hot iron poker and stick it in the oil, and it will crack the bottle right at that point. And then you just round off the edges there to make them less sharp. And I actually saw tumblers or glass.
Staff or city manager has any known conflict of interest on any item on the agenda?
None.
None.
None. None. None. None.
Now we're going to go to public participation. This is where members of the public can come to council, speak for council for up to 7 minutes, not to exceed 2 times during the council meeting. All that we ask is it not be pertaining to something that's on the agenda, unless you have to leave and you just need to say your piece and then take off, and or any pending litigation. So I usually start on my left. I usually start on the first row, and no one on the first row. Second row is Mr. Jeffers. You want to just come forward, please, and just state your name.
My name is Vince Jeffers, and I'm here for a couple of reasons, but first one, Resolution 20-110. If you know the history behind that property and the Lucero family, what they did to get things to happen, it wasn't right how they did it. Now they're going to, I'm not going to say it's gouging $600,000 an acre, but the way that property worked, that entire little section of land there, it's just still not right the way it happened, and I feel as though the city's being taken advantage of. 20-111, it's another copy and paste from 2007. To me, that's what I see there. You guys weren't ready for some changes. They made some updates to it. They made some recent changes to make it more relevant. I really sincerely hope that these guys get the support from the city council that they need, and it's done in a way that's fair for everyone and access is given to people who normally don't have access. And the Arts Council is one that really does a great job with it, so I'm glad they're heavily involved in what's happening, but there's some other people and organizations that I spoke out against in the past that they don't do what's right, and they will never do what's right. Council Bill 20-2024. Again, this goes back to another copy and paste from 2007. This is more the time when Arrowhead was, trying to get people up and going. And if you know about the, I'm going to say it wrong, CBD or whatever it's called, the cannabis, you guys wanted grass to be grown for different purposes. And this is a different type of thing. And you guys abused what was happening. New Mexico State University did the wrong thing. You guys did the wrong thing. The city of Las Cruces. And you're going to wind up benefiting. Just you guys will say, the Las Cruces public school systems over here with this field, Las Cruces, the city of Las Cruces, is going to make a deal. And the actuality of it is, you guys have already done that and made a ton of money with the New Mexico Department of Transportation. This one deal right here is part of that. Again, when the Benz family got involved with things, they've been involved for years. It's not right. And I'm just hopeful that you guys watch what's happening with these funds, the LEADA funds. It's done right. Last week when I left the city council meeting, once again, I had a problem. I went to the police department, did what I was supposed to do. And it's just one of those things. You guys don't have people available to talk, that's fine. I'm not going to pursue it because it's going to wind up nowhere. I know what a set up the wrong way is. I know when I leave in the back row, people say, that's him. I know when somebody follows me out and I get assaulted, and there are people in the parking lot with their cell phones just waiting for me to mess up. I'm not gonna. I should have done something differently. I did what I was supposed to do, and you guys failed again. And that's my opinion. You could have done something, but even at the police station, we just don't have time right now. We don't have an officer to talk to you. Again, for me, that's Gen 3 of Steve Newby. 2 other versions I've been through. Each one not right, doing what they did. But that's only one of the people. That's one of the many people who do the wrong thing. And you guys support time and time again. I wish it were different, but it is what it is. And you guys are winning. You're benefiting. You're happy. You don't want to make any changes. You've even said, we told the state we didn't do nothing wrong. You got a different city attorney. The other city attorney did the same thing. Prior to that, the other city attorney did the same thing. Different counselors. But you got to know the history behind what's happening in the community that you guys are elected to represent. And each time you're saying, well, we didn't do nothing wrong. There's a pattern of behavior there. And if you don't accept some responsibility for some of the things you're doing, how's it going to get any better? I saw on the Las Cruces Police Department's Facebook page, they had a guy going for treatment in a medical facility. When I talk about picked off properties and medical practice, that's one. Anyone up there would know the difference between a vein and a tendon. Those guys, they try to intentionally harm people because they can provoke people, and it works out real well. It's not just 1 or 2. There's over 30 medical practices that have been picked off. Same thing at 160 Roadrunner. You guys are happy you got your art center, but do you know really the history behind what happened, how you got that, who benefited, who lost, and how that's what's important. How did it happen? Why, you guys don't really care. It's just, what do you get out of it for you guys? The city's better off, that's all that matters. You destroy people's rights. You're slowly creeping up on democracy, just saying, that doesn't matter, we have a better way of doing things. As long as we're the ones making the decisions, it's better for everyone. It's really not. And I think if you ever really took the time and saw the damage the city has done to the citizens and took some responsibility, we'd all be better off. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. So that was the second row. Anyone on the third row? Fourth row? Fifth row? Sixth? Seventh? Eighth, or the last row? So no one else on my left? Okay, now I'm going to turn to my right. And first row, yes, sir? Want to come forward? Just need you to state your name, please. And thanks for taking the picture the other day, earlier.
Oh, my profession. No, not really. Thank you, Mayor Miyagishima and council members. I'm a recent
Can I get your name, please?
My name is Dr. Walter Funk. I'm a recent resident of Las Cruces. I've been here about 10 months, and I love it here. We've got a fantastic city and a fantastic culture, and I'm really pleased to be here. And thank you all for allowing me to speak. This is a public safety commentary, and I wanted to remind everyone that last Sunday, which was 8 days ago, I was acknowledged a life flight helicopter coming into Sonoma Ranch Road. Sonoma Ranch Road, as you probably know, for everybody who's been here for a while, runs pretty much from 3 miles north of I-70 all the way down past University Avenue. North of I-70, for a stretch of about 3 miles, this is a 2-lane road with no traffic, no signals, no lighting, just basically a 3-mile drag strip. And 8 days ago, a woman pulled off from Scirocco Road, which is a T intersection, onto Sonoma Ranch Road, and was T-boned by a truck that it has coming around the corner. And basically both of the occupants, the 20-odd-year-old woman and her 9-month-old child or whatever, were air flighted out to El Paso. That was my wake-up call. Now, on that entire stretch of Sonoma Ranch Road, basically from Peachtree, and you don't have to pull out your Google Maps or anything to figure it out, it's about 3 miles north of 70, all the way down to 70. There's not a single traffic light, a single stop sign, a single anything. There are no lights. There are no evening lights. There are no signal lights of any time, and a posted speed limit of between 35 and 40 miles an hour. Now, everybody knows in New Mexico that if you are given a 35 to 40 mile an hour speed limit, you're going to be doing 50 miles an hour. And that happens all the time. In my neighborhood, I live in Metro Verde, which is this big blossoming, development on the north side of 70 off Sonoma Ranch Road. There are at least 1,000 homes there now, and probably another 1,000 to 2,000 more that are going in over the next year or two. Just see them all day. And it's people like me. I'm from California. It's all these people moving into the area, and they have a T intersection. And please, anybody who's taken notes, note that it is Engler Road, Engler Road, and Sonoma Ranch Road that are a T intersection on the same road that this woman was smacked into 8 days ago. There are probably another 1,000 homes going in the next 2 years. I suspect strongly that Sonoma Ranch Road is going to be improved to the point that it is south of 70, where it's a boulevard with lots of stop signs and lots of traffic controls. But right now, this stretch between 70 and Peachtree Road, please note, 70 and Peachtree Road has one stop sign. One. And people are going through that road at 50 miles an hour all of the time. And last weekend was the first of many incidents that are going to happen on that road. Now, the road that I follow, Engler Road to Sonoma Ranch, which is a T intersection, is full of moms taking their kids to the school up at the top of Peachtree Road, coming back, contractors day and night, a taco truck on the corner to block the view, and there is no stop sign at a T intersection. That is going to be very important for you to get a $1,000 issue to put stop signs on that T intersection so that we don't have an uncontrolled 50-mile-an-hour flow filled with, hundreds of cars every few minutes trying to make a T intersection on that same thing, let alone the sunlight coming into their eyes at daybreak or whatever, and with absolutely no lights on the road. This is a disaster that is another disaster that is just waiting to happen on that road. It'll probably cost the city of Las Cruces $1,000 at the most to at least put stop signs up on that T intersection and some traffic control to make sure that people aren't doing 60 miles an hour to get their kids to school. It's simple, right? It's like the cheapest thing you're going to do in the next 6 months is to take a look at that. And you can all Google it right now. Take a look between Peachtree and 70. There is one stop sign in that entire area. So you've got people, who wouldn't if you got a 3-mile stretch? If I had a 3-mile stretch of road to drive, to drive whatever speed I wanted to, that's what happened last Sunday. And that woman and her kid were life-flighted. Fortunately, they weren't killed. But if you go and look at the Las Cruces Sun News or whatever, look at the picture of what happened at that place. It's a smoking hellhole. Those people just got T-boned at like 50 miles an hour. Not because they're stupid drivers, not because they were drunk, not because the sun was in their eyes. It's just like a bad traffic situation. That's about all I have for this commentary, but I really hope that all the council members and whoever has the responsibility to look at traffic control will take a very serious look at that entire stretch of road and really make an effort to improve it. It's costing nothing to put in stop signs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Funk. I'm going to make note of it, and I appreciate you coming forward to share these concerns. So one of the things that we'll make note to our Director of Public Works is that particular area. There are certain requirements, and I'm sure it will probably meet it, as far as different types of traffic devices, whether it's a stop sign, whether it's a stoplight. It has to be based on, they have to have certain studies, but nonetheless, if it's that dark, we'll probably ask staff to take a look, even if it's temporary lighting, if it's that bad. I appreciate you bringing this forward. It looks like this is in District 5. I was trying to find out if this was actually, District 5. So, and that particular intersection, Engler and Sonoma Ranch Boulevard. David, did you want to say something about this? But that's something there that definitely we need to verify and do a few more things.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, good afternoon. David Dolan, Assistant City Manager for Operations. That is within the Metro Verde development, the area that Dr. Funk is talking about. Sonoma Ranch phase mile 3 is under construction through the VAD, and then we will go to mile 2, which is from Engler to Peachtree Hills. That is part of the Metro Verde Voluntary Assessment District. Both those intersections are planned for roundabouts. That's one of the reasons that has not occurred yet. They will occur in the last mile, which will change the traffic control. Further, Metro Verde VAD was approved without the need for streetlights on the residential streets. Engler, Peachtree, and Sonoma Ranch Boulevard will be receiving streetlights as the latter part of their phases. Streetlights always go in last. The conduit goes in first, and then streetlights go in last for the actual construction, because the city and the developer share costs on those responsibilities. and you just recently approved a budget adjustment for those streetlights. Peachtree Hills, east of Sonoma Ranch Boulevard, was built by the schools at the time to access both the middle school and elementary school, and they did that improvement on BLM land. That will be improved further by the developer at their expense, not part of the voluntary assessment district. So it is very much underway. There will not be a need for a traffic signal at either one of those roadways because the roundabout will solve that. But I will actually provide my card to Dr. Funk, and we will facilitate a meeting on the plans and the schedule with our Public Works Department so that he knows all of the details. It is very complex. Arroyo Road, Red Hawk, drainage improvements and other things are all part of the VAD, so we'll facilitate a meeting on that.
David, thank you for that explanation, but it is possible, if needed, to have some temporary lighting, is it not?
We will look at both temporary traffic controls and at temporary lighting. We may have to pay El Paso Electric for temporary bulbs.
Sure. I think in light of the fact, and I think I've been down there a few times, that it is extremely dark, and it's unfortunate that this situation happened. But that other phase that you're talking about, it's going to be, it's on the plans. It's already been funded. It's in the works, but it's still going to take several months before it's even completed.
Right.
So I think in the meantime, if we can at least have some type of lighting and some type of traffic control into the interim, I think is definitely something that would be warranted.
Engler east of and McGuffey east of Sonoma Ranch, Engler doesn't exist at this point. That will be a future connection. Engler west of Sonoma Ranch has a traffic stop sign, and I believe Peachtree Hills has a stop sign at Sonoma Ranch Boulevard. But we will verify that is traffic control. We just can't build the roundabouts and the roadways fast enough.
Sure. And thank you again. Thank you, David. Thank you again, Dr. Funk. And one last closing comment. There is a portion of Peachtree Hills that is actually in the county, but the part that you're talking about is in the city.
It is, and you don't, there is a stop sign on Engler. There is no stop sign on Sonoma Ranch going either way. And that's where you need to put a $50 stop sign on both ways so that you have a T intersection that is controlled in both ways. It's not about lighting.
Yes, sir.
It's not at all about lighting. It's about stopping the traffic that's going 50 miles an hour in both directions on a T intersection. Thank you.
And I'd be more than happy to, and I'm sure Councilor Sorg would join me to meet with you and the staff, and if we need to go out there.
Mail to the full council.
Yes, but I just más o menos. I mean, if you could just give us a more or less estimation based on your experience. How long has it taken? Because I think it's a travesty for that situation to exist, and for the travesty that such an accident happened. So I know that it's difficult to put up temporary signs, stop signs sometimes, because you're anticipating something. But if it's going to take a projected 6 months, it'll probably take at least another year. And so that's my concern, because the 2 years I've been on city council, when something is projected to be completed, it never has been completed at that point. And if there has been, show me. Show me where I'm wrong. And so I'm really concerned about the safety issue, and thank you, Dr. Funk, for bringing this to our attention, although Councilor Sorg has been on top of this sort of stuff throughout. Would it be possible to put up those just temporary stop signs where we don't have to necessarily at this point go through the federal DOT or state or local guidelines and maybe face some repercussion as if the feds would really care?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Flores, first and foremost, the roadway in question is not under state or federal jurisdiction. Oh, no. U.S. Highway 70 is, but Sonoma Ranch is a local road, provided it's not under private control at this point. So we will evaluate it for the appropriate temporary measures and for potential temporary lighting. Please keep in mind, however, we are dealing with a private developer who the city has an agreement with to develop certain roadways, including Sonoma Ranch Boulevard, and it is incumbent on us and the developer. The developer is responsible for developing the plans that meet city requirements, and that has been a process on every one of the projects. So that takes time, and then we have to do the bidding and the construction oversight at the city level. As to a hard calendar, I would say 2 years in a worst-case scenario, but some items are beyond city staff control. We've had multiple reviews of the same plan sets by the developer, and so we will address it, and I will get an answer to the full council as to a schedule that we can realistically meet. And if we can't realistically meet that, what temporary measures will be put in place in between.
Thank you, Mr. Dallahan. And you have Dr. Funk's information to get in touch with him for that meeting that the mayor and Councilor Sorg will be attending?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Flores, I provided him with my business card so he can make outreach to me.
Thank you, Mr. Dallahan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, so that was the first row, and no one on the second row, third row, fourth row, fifth, sixth, seventh, no one else on my right. Okay, so that will conclude public participation. So thank you for that. And before we go to acceptance of the agenda, we're going to have to remove item 5.1. We're going to have to take that off because we have to put a amendment on that. And so that leaves items 5.2 and 5.3 on. I'll just need a motion, a second, to accept the agenda as presented.
Move to accept the agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Sorg, second by Councilor Abeta Stuvi to accept the agenda as presented with item number 5.1 being removed for discussion. Christine?
This is on the motion to approve the agenda with the removal of item 5.1 for discussion. Councilor Abeta Stuvi?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondara?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, David Dallahan for the record, I'll present this one. We've been the city of Las Cruces has been a long, did you need?
Okay, so we accept the agenda.
You need a
So
motion and a second.
we're gonna do 5.1 then.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now I'll need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Flores, second by Councilor Vasquez. This is resolution number 20-107. Okay, so now, Mr. Eager.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I was just testing you, see if you were ready to go. So before you is a resolution authorizing two things related to the South Central Council of Governments. The South Central Council of Governments is made up of all municipalities, counties, and some special districts within its three-county area, which includes Doña Ana, Sierra County, where TRC is located, and Socorro County at the southern end of the Rio Grande Valley. As part of that membership, we provide annual dues of approximately $11,140. That is included in the city's annual budget for those dues. It is based on a per capita basis, and for the areas within Doña Ana County, that's 15 cents per person. Thus, our fee is set at that level. We budget that fee every year as part of the city manager's office. So that is part of our standard practice. As part of the agreement with South Central Council of Government, our membership roles and their services to us include appointments to their board of directors, which within the resolution is listed as the mayor and an alternate. That's the reason we ask that you remove that from the consent agenda, because the packet needs to be amended to include that alternate. As part of the SCOG services and the responsibilities on the board of directors, it requires their approval of SCOG's annual work program. They, as part of their services back to us, provide the dissemination of information that fosters greater coordination and efficiencies of programs within the COG area. They are also the administrator for the local Workforce Improvement Area Board. They address common problems, issues, and opportunities that are of a regional nature. and when requested, they provide technical, grant, economic development, planning, and other assistance. Generally, those are done at the request of the municipality or the county or the special district, and sometimes those involve additional fees based on the nature of the project. This resolution, we've done it historically every year to authorize the payment of the annual fee, which again I said was budgeted, but we've made a slight modification to the resolution to authorize the annual membership payment because we normally do that. And then we ask that you fill in the blank for the appointment of the the alternate position to the mayor. And then ongoing future years, the board appointments would be done through your regular board appointment process rather than bringing back a resolution every year. I can tell you that the previous alternate was from Council District 2. But from that, Mr. Mayor, your standard options, again, we do need an amendment before your final vote. With that, I stand for questions.
Thank you, Dave. So what I wanted the board to know, if they weren't aware of it, was if I don't make this meeting, I would designate City Councilor, former City Councilor Greg Smith, and so I asked Councilor Abeta-Stuvey if she wanted to continue in that role. She said she agreed. And then I said, unless one of you all really wanted to do that, but you get to drive out to beautiful Truth or Consequences from time to time. It's really nice. So if you're okay with that, then of course you'll get mileage per diem, and they'll take care of that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. So if that's okay with everyone, then I'll just need a motion. I need an amendment to appoint Councilor Abeta-Stuvey as the designee or the alternate.
I'll make that amendment.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Sorg, second by Councilor Flotis to appoint Councilor Abeta-Stuvey as my alternate or designated alternate. Christine?
This is on the motion to amend Resolution 20-107 to appoint Councilor Abeta-Stuvey as the alternate. Councilor Abeta-Stuvey?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gambetta?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, so now we're on the main motion. Is there any questions on this? Members of the public? Oh, yes, Councilor Abeta-Stuvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. David, in what direct ways have we been able to utilize this membership?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Abeta-Stuvey, if memory serves me correct, they've done some activities with us for contracted ED services for managing a Department of Commerce Economic Development Assistance Grant in years past. That's when we had a much smaller economic development function. It was really a one-person operations within the city manager's office at that time. Now we have an economic development department. But that's been quite a few years, if memory serves me correct. They also serve as like I indicated, the Workforce Improvement Board, the local one for the entire region. They also serve as the fiscal agent for the Regional Council of Governments for Transportation. But it's on an as-needed basis, and usually there's an additional fee for that service. So it's been a while when we've used that service. But we're part of a greater whole, and we influence issues within the region by being on the board and approve their annual work program and so forth. But it's been quite a while since we've had specific separate contracts for them for a specific function. I want to say it was in the 2005, 2006 era. So.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be real candid with you, Councilor. There's this one here, we tend to get a little bit more than maybe the other COG that we're in, but typically by us being part of this, they get a chance to interact with our city and our county because we're part of this South Central Council. But more importantly, it also helps some of the smaller communities that don't even have a village or council or any type of government other than their county government. And so by us being part of this helps them continue to receive services. It's kind of helping in a little bit. It's our way of being able to provide not only some financial assistance but also technical assistance, because sometimes they really contact various members of the city for some best practices and such. So I know where you're going, because when I first got on boards, I used to say, what do you do here? Why do we spend this? And a lot of times we forget, we are the second largest city here, and we are southern New Mexico. I'm not saying you forget that, but I'm just saying that I know I did. And to be able to help our smaller communities, I mean, you're talking places like Dattle and Magdalena, and isn't that your middle name? Yes. Yeah. And, things like these little communities that, it's good to have that interaction with them as well.
Thank you, Mayor.
And Mayor, members of council, I'll point out one thing. Doñana County and City of Las Cruces are the two biggest entities that make up the Council of Government, and we have the largest population, both as a municipality and as a county, within the COG. That's why our rate is at 15 cents. All the other member entities have a 30-cent per capita fee. So we are a little bit of Big Brother in an advisory role. And I know that we've had outreach from other communities about what we do or looking at ordinances that we've implemented here. So we're a great resource in the rest of the region.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Councilor. Okay, so if there's nothing further, Christine?
This is on the motion to approve Resolution 20-107 as amended. Councilor Abeyta-Stuvey?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondeta?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, so next we're going to go to item 6.1, Resolution 20-110. Need a motion and a second, please.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made by Councilor Vasquez, seconded by Councilor Sorg. And looks like Cecilia Villegas?
Yes,
Yeah,
Celicia.
okay.
Mayor, City Council. Celicia.
Celicia.
Yes.
I didn't have my glasses on. Thank you. We'll be discussing.
Okay. Mayor, City Council, good afternoon. My name is Celicia Villegas with the Economic Development Department. The resolution I bring for your consideration today pertains to a real estate purchase agreement between the city and Gary and Ginger, Inc. The subject property is located at 991 West Amador, which is the Horse and Hound Feed Supply currently. It is a little over 2 acres and includes 2 buildings. The first building consists of a retail and office space and is approximately 8,400 square feet. The second building is a warehouse of approximately 8,400 square feet and has open storage space of about 3,000 square feet. The buildings were constructed in 2005 and 2013 respectively. Here's an aerial of the property. As you can see, it's just north of the Community of Hope campus. And here's a picture of the existing retail store. And the warehouse. For the proposed purchase negotiations, 2 independent appraisals were completed in November of last year, which came in at $1.32 million and $1.325 million. The negotiated purchase price is for the lower of the 2 appraisals at the 1.32, and the funding source will be the Tell Short Fund. Closing is also set to be on or before April 30th of this year. Acquiring this property will allow for the expansion of the Casa de Peregrinos facility as part of the Community of Hope campus. Being directly adjacent will also assist in the accessibility of the entire campus. And here are your council options, and with that, I'll be happy to stand for questions. I believe we have the seller also, if you have any questions for him.
Okay, thank you, Celicia. I appreciate that. Councilor Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Celicia. Appreciate your presentation and your work on this. So this is adjacent to the Community of Hope campus,
Correct.
Is that correct? Could you just talk briefly about the plan that the city has in place to essentially use capital outlay money to be able to fund the purchase of this building in the future?
I believe Mr. Dallahan will be happy to explain that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, good afternoon. Councilor Vasquez, David Dallahan again for the record. So as we had discussed previously with the council, the property acquisition is for the expansion to accommodate Casa de Peregrinos on the property from the Horse and Hound business location at this address. The state capital outlay has been awarded to the city. There was one in a previous year for plan, design, construct. I believe that's around $800,000. We just received notice late last week in the state capital outlay bill for this legislative session that just ended. There is another $1.4 million, give or take. It could be 1.7. I don't remember the exact number. For plan, design, construct. No acquisition money is out of the capital outlay. That's why we're using city Telshore funds for this purpose. It will allow for the essentially the expansion of the Community of Hope property. So on this map, this is the existing driveway into 999 West Amador, which is city-owned Community of Hope property. The boundary runs like this, all the way over to here. This is Community of Hope Building 1 that was built in the early 90s. This is Building 2, which is Jardín de los Niños. This is Building 3 that was built in the early 2000s, I believe. And the main operations of Community of Hope are housed here. Casa de Peregrinos is currently here. And through capital outlay, they will be remodeling these two buildings to move into Casa de Peregrinos into this space. I believe Community of Hope, the main agency, will be expanding into this space. So that's essentially it.
Thank you.
Councilor.
I appreciate the breakdown on the use of those funds and the cost of the total project. And thank you and your staff and administrative staff for helping to make this deal happen. I think this to me represents a great opportunity for the city to offer more to the community in the space of helping to deal with food insecurity in our communities, and that Horse and Hound property seems like it's set up for potentially some good food storage opportunities in addition to kind of intake, right, and office space opportunities as well. So I see also Representative Lara Cadena in the audience. I want to thank her as well as our other legislators who supported this project because we couldn't have done it without the state's help. So absolutely supportive of this. I know that.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. I too am really excited about the opportunities that this is going to present to extend a very well established program, but a very needed program. As you know, food insecurity is huge in our community. Not only does Mr. Alva and his staff help our children and families, but also our elderly. There's a ton of a lot of elderly that are suffering from food insecurity, and so I know that this is going to benefit the community. Just today I received a couple of emails or messages really about the homeless and our concerns about concerns about just seeing more and more, right? The tents and different things that we're seeing up at the Burned Lake. And I just want to, again, to let the community know that Mayor, myself, and Councilor Vasquez have had conversations with law enforcement about that. But it's not a simple fix, right? It's not just about not providing the infrastructure. There's so many other things that are playing into this, like mental health and the lack of service array to address mental health and substance abuse. So I'm very excited about this opportunity that Mr. Alba has, along with Community Hope, just that whole area and what they can currently provide and what they will be able to provide with this property. So thank you very much to everybody that worked on this. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Sorg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for presenting this to us. I guess my question is probably I'll wait for all my questions for the Mr. Now I forgot your name again. Alba? Yes. Lorenzo C. Yeah, that's it. For him to make a comment. I would like to know how they plan to use this property for the Pellegrinos, and if they could help us on that. But I had another question too. But I'll let you go ahead and answer that question first. I might.
My name is Lorenzo Alba. I'm the Executive Director at Casa de Peregrinos. Mayor, City Council, thank you so much for this opportunity. I do want to really thank our city manager and his staff for really pushing this through, David Dollahan, and everybody that was involved in making this happen. It's a super exciting time for us because we see what's happening in our community, and we want to do more. We don't just want to be the Band-Aid, but we want to be more of the solution, and the partnership with the city really helps. Our intention with the facility is to expand on the opportunity for food rescue, which allows us to have more partners to bring more food in for the community, not only from the grocers locally, but from regional farmers as well. We just can't grow that right now. So what we bring in the 4,000 square foot facility we're in is pretty much it. Our intention also is to look at expanding services with possibly opening additional days once we're staffed up enough. Also to put a teaching kitchen in the facility so that we can teach people how to cook with the food that they're receiving from us, and to push more nutrition programs. We want to have offices in the facility so that other agencies can hold office hours at our facility. I don't think there's too many agencies that serve 30,000 people. So this will give them the opportunity to provide other services for them as well. There's a lot of things that can help some of the families that we're serving, a lot of other services, and we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to get in front of them. And through this facility, we'll be able to do a lot more of those partnerships with other agencies as well as with the city. I hope that answers your question there.
Okay, I guess it's going away. I was about to sneeze. Yes, it does answer me. I think that does answer my questions. I remember the times I've volunteered to help in your facility there, and you are very limited on a space. There's no doubt about it. And this gives you a much better opportunity to serve the population that you're serving. So I'm very happy about this. Yeah. I guess I can't think of, Mr. Mayor, the other question I have, but it's good. I know it's all good.
Councilor,
Thank you, Mayor.
Perhaps, and Lorenzo, did you want to also talk about the bill that Representative Cadena carried, I think?
I do.
That I would appreciate.
I do. This is, when I was out there in Santa Fe, I just wanted to make sure that we were going to get this additional funding to be able to do more with what we currently have. The conversation actually started with Representative Lara Cadena, as well as Representative Small, to make this happen. She was a big push out there. She was the one that was a catalyst to make a lot of this happen. And I think as we figure out exactly what we need to get this facility ready for operation, she will be one of our greatest allies that we have. And I just want to thank her on a personal note and on behalf of our board of directors at Casa de Peregrinos and this community for making this happen. I think this really shows a commitment not only between Casa de Peregrinos and the city of Las Cruces, but as well as a business community in here. You know, Curtis and Amanda Creighton have been there for a long time, and what this is going to do for their business as well is going to be incredible. But also the partnership with the state. As we tackle food insecurity together and we try to do something better for our community so that those families that we're serving have more of an opportunity to try to get out of those situations. I see everybody up here is very committed to that. There's not a single person up here that I'm looking at that is not committed to that, make that happen. We have great business partners. We have great individual donors. One of our business partners here, Rico Gonzalez, I would be remiss to not mention his name, from El Paso Electric. They fund us greatly for the last few years. But it's important for us to have these partnerships to be able to address this difficult issue. You know, it's always so humbling for me when things happen like this, because it's like I just told Councilor Arica then, now it's time for me to really get to work. And that's what I'm going to do. And I make that commitment to you right now on behalf of our board of directors and on behalf of the people that we serve. We're going to make this happen. It's going to be a great thing for our community. And you're putting almost 2 acres of an additional footprint on the Community of Hope campus. That's a commitment, and you should give yourselves a hand for that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, thank you.
could you give me a little more detail on what the representative did for you? I know there's some money involved. Go ahead and
She had all the moving parts going over there, and it was just a lot of conversations with her, not only while I was walking with her in the roundhouse, sitting with her, talking to her, texting to her. She was asking all the right questions, making sure that the entire delegation up there representing us knew what we were trying to do. It also helped when the community is also calling, sending emails, sending messages to the legislators to make this happen. But the moving parts are what she did. That's the part I couldn't do all by myself. She's the one that talked to other legislators. She's the one that gave our plan out to everybody and what we were trying to accomplish here. That's what she did. And she'll continue to be a huge asset to us in this community as long as we keep her around.
Okay, very well. Thank you very much. And absolutely, credit goes to a lot of different people, especially the ones you mentioned, yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Okay, any other questions? Councilor Flores?
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Lorenzo.
Thank you.
Very much for your work, and I especially want to commend you for your tenacity. I know this wasn't entirely easy on you or for you, so thank you so much for that. And I like very much the part of the program where you will have cooking lessons, and I hope that children are incorporated into the teaching. And I know that Kids Can does some of that, but we can't do enough of it to educate our community as to eating healthy foods. And I know that for children, there's a particular, I think there's a very soft spot in all of our hearts for children who are very malnourished. And so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for your work and your board.
You're welcome. And just to tell you that I've had conversations with the New Mexico Department of Agricultural chefs, and they will be designing the kitchen. They will be designing the kitchen. I did get some permission from our Secretary Whitty to get that done.
So when they're designing, maybe they can have, have some of the facilities at children's levels?
Oh.
And not have the regular for adults, but maybe for smaller people?
We can do the platforms like they do over at Dion's Pizza. I would be remiss by not thanking also the city's neighborhood programs for all the help that they give us on the grants. I know Natalie Green has been a tremendous support, and retired Vera Zamora was also a huge support for us. So we really want to thank you so much for all the support you've given Casa de Peregrinos. And again, City Manager Bill Studer, thank you for dealing with me. And David Dollahan, thank you for dealing with me. I know that I've been kind of a pain in the butt sometimes, but hey, that's what you got to do when you take care of the poor.
Thank you, Lorenzo. No more questions from council? Members of the public? Seeing none? Christine? Oh, I'm sorry, there was someone? Oh, yeah, Rico. your last name is Suave?
That's my only name. Rico Gonzalez, and I'm here wearing 3 different hats today. Working with El Paso Electric, I'm the Director of Government Relations, Chair of Mavida, and then just as a citizen. I wanted to give you guys some information that you all probably know. The UN Food Agriculture Organization says that 30% of food is wasted globally across the supply chain, contributing 8% of total global greenhouse gas emissions. If food waste were a country, it would come in third after the United States and China in terms of impact to global warming. And that conversation is a conversation that Lorenzo and I have had time and time again. And the work that he's going to be doing with our agricultural friends and farmers is really big to that end. He and Casa de Peregrinos have worked with Walmart and Albertsons in putting together very innovative ways of saving food. And so this facility only allows that mission to be expanded. And so that was one point I didn't want to see glossed over. As Director of Government Relations in New Mexico, I also get to oversee our community contributions. And I can't say that I've had one partner in this community, not disparaging anyone else, but I haven't had one partner in this community who has not been more proactive and, as he put it, more of a pain in the butt than Lorenzo Elba. And working with Representative Cadena this session is yet another example of that. He was in Santa Fe knocking on doors almost as much as anyone else that I saw from Las Cruces there, and was a pain in the butt. And so if you do vote for this thing, then I have a feeling he's going to be a double pain in the butt from now on. So just know that you're creating that much work for everybody else. And then from the Mavida perspective, these are the types of bedrock infrastructure that when we're recruiting economic-based jobs, that when we can say we're taking care of our poor, when we're taking care of our seniors, we're taking care of our children, those are quality of life pieces that people are looking for when looking to expand their businesses that are here, looking to locate their businesses here, and looking, frankly, for opportunities and jobs as well. So and then from a personal perspective, I just, these are the people that we need to be helping. And so I thank you for that from all 3 perspectives. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rico. Appreciate it. Okay, anyone else? Okay. If not, Christine?
This is on the motion to approve Resolution 20-110. Councilor Abeda-Stuvey?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondara?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, item number 6.2, Resolution 20-111.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Sorg, second by Councilor Flores. And Mr. Lorenzo Cepeda will be presenting. I thought you were the applicant, the one who was buying the building, or selling the building.
No, Mr. Mayor. We have representation Lorenzo A to Z here. I'm the Z. So Lorenzo Cepeda, Public Art Program Coordinator with the Quality of Life Department. And
I thought you were coming down to pick up your check, right after we approved it. I'll
get this eventually. Thank you, Lynn. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'm here to follow up on last month's presentation to Council of the Las Cruces Public Art Master Plan. And as we had mentioned previously, via Partnership, who was here to present, they were our planning consultants, and they conducted the research and facilitated conversations with the City Art Board, city staff, and a broad group of stakeholders. And then they developed the recommendations in this plan. So I'd like to start by, in speaking about Las Cruces Public Art, by sharing our mission, which is Las Cruces Public Art commissions and cares for a collection of contemporary public artworks, promotes the community's access and engagement with public art, and supports growth of public art practice in Las Cruces. So with that in mind, more specifically, the way we are pursuing our mission is through a series of goals. And the first goal being, we want to elevate Las Cruces as the arts capital of southern New Mexico, which means that the city would demonstrate its commitment to art and artists with each new park and facility that it builds. Las Cruces should become known as a place where you can encounter art in everyday places. As for adding visual interest and beauty, we would like to elevate the appearance and the experience of frequently used city facilities and parks for users, as well as for the passerbys. And then we would like to activate public spaces, which is elevating a city facility or park from a purely functional place to an engaging place that helps bring people together. And then when it comes to improving visual identity, works of public art become well-known icons, denoting and creating a unique identity for parks and facilities. So finally, if we make art and culture a way of life, we create opportunities for people to experience art in their everyday lives. We would like to communicate Las Cruces' identity as a place that values art, quality design, and the contributions of artists, increasing civic pride for residents. So, with those goals in mind and that mission, we have several opportunities as outlined in the master plan for installing artwork. The first one, obviously, is parks and facilities. These are public art projects at city-owned parks and facilities such as City Hall, recreation centers, parking garages, public safety facilities, the convention center, and much more. And then when it comes to landmark public art projects, these are highly visible. Library mural at Brannigan that we did recently. And then there's Las Cruces Stories. This one may encompass all the other opportunities, but there's special opportunities for public art projects that intentionally focus on illuminating aspects of the unique history and present-day culture of Las Cruces. So those would be our opportunities. Now, we do intend to offer programming that would encourage local talent to gain the skills necessary to become a public artist. These are outlined in the master plan as well. And there's an implication that we differentiate between, say, the standard fine artist as opposed to a public art fine artist. So there's a different skill set within the two, namely being that public artists have the experience working with municipal contractors and just the municipal government, in addition to having an awareness of incorporating the public space with the art, and sometimes literally integrating the art into the public facility. So we would like to offer artists here professional development services, which means they would collaborate with other entities to provide workshops. We would collaborate with other entities, to provide workshops and resources for artists interested in pursuing public art. This should include workshops on specific topics and artist talks by experienced public artists. And then following that line of thought, we would create mentorship opportunities for local artists interested in pursuing public art to assist more experienced artists commissioned for major projects in Las Cruces. So this is just a way to, say, apprentice with a professional artist with a vast experience, bringing up the skill set of our local artists, making them more competitive for future calls. And then finally, we would like to support muralism. We would like to develop a guide addressing best practices in mural making. So this would be aimed both at artists and property owners. So it's something we would like to encourage, as well as provide some parameters for how to make these art pieces more effective to our citizens. And of course, these mural supports can also be accomplished through the opportunities of community collaboration, and would include Las Cruces stories as well. So that's the general scope and follow-up to the master plan we presented last month. We did appreciate the council's recommendations and suggestions, and with our VIA partner consultants, we took all this into consideration, and we refined some of the language, which I'd like Madam Chair Meg Freyermuth to give you a brief update on the changes that we made. Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Thank you, Lorenzo.
Yes, thank you, Lorenzo, and good afternoon, Mayor and Council. And my name is Meg Freyermuth, and I am Chair for the City Art Board. And I would first like to thank you all for your thoughtful comments on the Public Art Master Plan when we presented this plan on January 28th during a work session. Since that time, the City Art Board, city staff, and VIA Partnership have worked hard to refine the plan to be more flexible and better fit the needs of the City of Las Cruces artists, and the community at large. We appreciate and pay close attention to any and all feedback we receive from Council. One major comment that City Council made about the plan was regarding artists' rosters possibly being too exclusive. Changes were made to the description of artist rosters in Appendix D on page 113. Artist rosters could prove to be a very useful tool in the future of our city's public art program. As the program grows, we may find that having an artist roster expedites the process for certain types of projects, making the process easier for the city as well as the artist. Also, artist rosters allow the artist to submit their qualifications once in order to be considered for multiple projects in the future. If an artist does not make it onto the list one year, they can always reapply. The language in the updated plan allows for flexibility in how the city and the City Art Board could go about developing such rosters and implementing them. Artist rosters are also very important for developing artist professionalism in our city, since most municipalities use these lists for their public art projects, such as the cities that we studied throughout this process, like Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and El Paso. Las Cruces Public Art can also develop several artist rosters, several different types, to cover different areas and levels of artist expertise. And Las Cruces Public Art, as Lorenzo mentioned, we will also be hosting workshops on how to apply for cities' art calls and how to develop a public art portfolio, for example. There are many opportunities with artist rosters that will benefit our community's artists as well as our public art program. So another comment from Council that led to changes in this plan was regarding the artist selection and commissioning process. In this process, artists are simply asked to submit a letter of intent, a resume, references, and images of past work to be considered for most projects. The rest of the process involves multiple steps for the City Art Board and art selection committees to be sure that artists are fairly reviewed and that opportunities are open to a broad range of artists. Artist rosters are also beneficial here in reducing some of the red tape in the commissioning process because they allow the artist to apply once, again, to be considered for multiple projects, and they allow for expediency on the city's end as well, since these artists would likely already be set up as vendors with the city. It is also a personal goal of mine, while serving as chair and serving on the City Art Board, to always work towards diversifying our artist pools, as well as our board and selection committees. The City Art Board has engaged in several discussions regarding diversity, and it is our intent to always think of the community at large when we make decisions, and to always think outside of our individual selves and identities. Several other minor changes include adding an annual public art evaluation for previous and current fiscal years, expanding on the types of arts community members who can serve on art selection committees, and adding collaboration with the city's Youth Advisory Board by having a voting youth member on any art selection committee for a project where there is anticipated to be a youth audience and focus. And liability insurance, of course, was brought up as a possible barrier for some local artists. However, this is a legal requirement for any contractor with the city, and it helps artists protect themselves while contracting with the city, as well as gain professional experience in what it takes to work with a municipality. This is listed as a possible topic for professional development on page 85 of the plan. And we hope that Las Cruces Public Art will be able to provide education and guidance on a range of topics for Las Cruces artists who would like to create public art with the city. Council also stated a desire to see public art in all council districts and neighborhoods, as well as artworks that tell the diverse stories and history of Las Cruces. And so as Lorenzo mentioned, we have the Las Cruces Stories section starting on page 80. And the City Art Board has been having conversations regarding how to tell the diverse array of cultural and historical stories of Las Cruces in an inclusive, honest, and celebratory manner. We are also working with our liaison, Lorenzo Zepeda, to become more aware of which districts and neighborhoods in Las Cruces have a deficit of public art, and to explore options on how to add more art to these areas. Another related concern with no recommended change to the plan was regarding art on commercial properties. While we cannot easily incentivize through monetary means any public art on these properties, Las Cruces Public Art can set an example through the creation of a thriving public art program, and this plan will help guide us in building the success of this program. And I would like to remind you all, including the public, that myself and the other City Art Board members are always here to help if you have any questions, concerns, or ideas regarding Las Cruces Public Art. And the City Art Board unanimously approves of the recent changes to the Las Cruces Public Art Master Plan, and we unanimously recommend that City Council adopt this plan for our city and our community. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I will be here if you have any further questions today.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you, Mayor, Council. And just to kind of close here, our next steps would be funding public art. We'd like to follow up next early spring with an ordinance to codify our % for art funding. Additionally, funding will come from general fund, at least we hope, and these requests would cover conservation and restoration, operation and administration, as well as project funding for other special art projects. And with that, here are council's options, and we can stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Mayor Pro Tem Gandara, Councilor Abate-Estuvi. Oh, okay. Councilor Abate-Estuvi.
Thank you, Mayor. A lot of my questions actually have to still do with this, the intended artist roster. And I was wondering, how often would the roster be updated?
That really depends on the projects, but the roster isn't a fixed thing. We could have several rosters going at the same time, depending on the amount of projects. Our goal is to update them as often as possible, and we're looking at the option of having an ongoing registration of artists, so just keeping it open. You know, we may limit it to a certain number, but certainly we can have incoming rotations. At least that seems to be the way it would work.
And if an artist is chosen from the roster, could their name be then pulled from the roster to allow others and more equal opportunity?
Absolutely. And that's kind of the whole scope of the roster, is to provide these equal opportunities for local artists who wouldn't otherwise be able to compete at a national level. But we hope that from this roster we could pull artists not only for certain projects specifically that they would lead, but also use them in apprenticeship programs working with nationally known artists.
Okay, and what specific language do we have in this plan to help protect the public to have that equal opportunity? Because I see a lot of language that it's kind of undecisive. So if we get somebody that wants to develop a roster and have only a certain amount of names and they choose that, what are the protections for people?
So as you've seen in the plan, there's not a specific statement on the limits for how many artists can be on the roster. And that said, there's not even a section that illustrates how many rosters we can have. So it just really depends on our initial objective, which is to be more diverse, but also keeping in mind that the master plan is just a general template for how we want to approach. So of course, with each project that we bring forward, with each roster that we bring forward to council, your input and recommendations are absolutely crucial.
Okay. And just to clarify then, there is no specific language there that kind of alleviates those concerns that we had about the roster?
Not specifically, but like I mentioned, Councilor Abeyta-Stuvi, most of these projects are going to be brought forward to City Council, so we can approach it on a one-by-one. I think our consultants advised that it would be too limiting to be too specific on the roster issue, which I think is how it was before. So it was rephrased in a way that makes it more general. But like I said, each project's going to be different, or each group of projects would be different and may require a roster per grouping.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, you had a question?
Thank you. Thank you, Lorenzo and Meg. I think this is one of the first times ever that I can say from a past council meeting with all our concerns that they were addressed line by line, question by question, and then with page numbers to boot. So thank you. I was looking for them as I was preparing for them, and I appreciate being able to kind of move as you're talking through that, looking for the exact language. And so I very much appreciate all the work that you took, really what we had to say to heart, went back and really had this robust, it seems, appears like, as I read the minutes, to a robust conversation with the board in terms of equity and ensuring that there's equal access, right? And especially specific to the rosters. I think those are really important. And what I'm really excited about is the technical assistance that you will be offering, the capacity building to our local artists apprenticeship and beyond, I think is so very important. So my question is around, and I'm sorry I didn't put a page number down. We have a new system of here reviewing our packets and whatnot, so I was just really trying to get used to doing that. But you had, in the master plan, you had spoken to the 75,000, right? Like when it comes to council, I think that was one of the things we were like, the amount that you had given was like, then everything would be coming over, right? So, and then I think the least amount is the 23. Did I get that correct?
I believe it said 20,000.
20,000. Okay. Yes. So the ones at 20,000 go to you as the board, and you will determine. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct, but like I mentioned, we would still bring to council for updates and possible recommendations.
No, sure. And I just want to make sure that that's what I was reading.
Yes.
And let's see, I did some notes. Hold on. I think that's it. I think I'm satisfied with all the things that we covered that I know I was concerned about. The other thing is that I want to say that over the weekend was an amazing opportunity, right, with the opening of the Art Museum, the Devastali Hall, and then I went to the Sister Cities concert. So we talk a lot about art and music sort of building bridges, right? Even, and so I know that's what you're trying to do here, and I'm so excited about involving the youth. Having a youth as part of your board is going to be, you know, just trying to connect those dots. And again, I very much appreciate all that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Gandara.
All right, thank you. Let's see, we have Councilor Bencomo, Councilor Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Saavedra and Megan, for that, and I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. I was really happy to see you address all of the concerns that we brought, and so thank you as well to the City Art Board for all the work that they put into this. I have also maybe more of a recommendation in terms of the roster. I wondered if, since, you know, it was kept in here, I'm curious about two things. One, what would that very first roster look like? Is there one already sort of that somebody's thinking about? No? So like what would the process be like for that very first roster that's created? And maybe I'll let you answer that and then I'll come back with a follow-up question.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Bencomo. Essentially, it would be approached similar to what we would do with a call for art, where we had a list of applicants, except as opposed to narrowing it down to 3 or 1, we would just keep it. We may cap it off, we may not, but I think considering the size of our community, we may just end up taking all the artists that apply and hopefully match them with a project that fits their skill set as well as their vision. I hope that addresses you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. I actually was thinking something similar in terms of, you know, anytime there was an RFQ put out there for those artists that applied and perhaps didn't get selected, if those artists could then be placed on a roster, for example.
Correct.
Wonderful. And then I just wanted to say that I really loved, maybe it was just because I was reading it for the second time, but I don't remember having read the piece around, on page 74 around public art in specific areas of the community, and I really appreciated that, and I'm really excited about that. I think that's a huge opportunity. I was just talking to a constituent this morning about the lack of neighborhood identity in District 4 and really across the entire city, and so I think that's a really great opportunity for artists to be engaged in the community. You did have something on there that I had a quick question about. On page 75 it says something about the site would have to have an
Thank you. Councilor Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I just really want to thank the City Art Board for its hard work, and I reported at the last council meeting how in-depth you go into all the agenda items, and I also mentioned, and we repeat again, that I was really impressed with Ms. McKenzie's report to the board insofar as her taking to heart the comments that were made by councilors and the mayor when it was first presented and she was here in person. And she picked up on every comment and addressed every comment in a very respectful and insightful manner. And then that in turn was received in that manner collectively by the City Art Board. And in particular, there was a lot of discussion. And I don't know if it's on the record, I didn't review the minutes, but there was a lot of discussion as to what was meant by diversity. And I know that the chair, Fairmouth, and vice chair, Rebecca, Courtney, and all of us discussed the problems in having, I think a comment was also made about the composition of the art board itself, and not necessarily, there was a lot of concern as to whether the roster would be exclusive of some of our local talent and and that was a big concern, which was addressed in what you just presented. But there was a discussion as to the composition of the art board itself, and I have to recognize that it would be ideal to have, I think we have two members on the board who are young women. One of them is the chair, and the other one is Bardwell, or?
Christina Bellu.
Yeah, Christina. And the others are about in my age group, and you know, we're all in our 40s. No, I'm just kidding. We're the people who have retired from our professions, and then now have the time to do volunteer work, and I'm just grateful that we have the talent that we have on the Community Art Board, irrespective of ethnicity and gender. I think it's weighted by, it's not diverse in that respect, or age-wise, but you know, we take what we can, and sometimes, yes, it's good to aim for all sorts of diversity, you know, whatever, gender, age, ethnicity, but I think we are very fortunate to have the composition of the board that we have today, and I want to make that perfectly clear as a woman and as a woman of color who has fought for decades to have representation throughout in every area of my life or wherever I go. But I do have to say that sometimes we just don't have, we're not fortunate to have people just knocking on that door with all those diversity qualifiers or identities to serve. So I want to commend again Ms. McKenzie and the board. And Ms. McKenzie's presentation was very much on point, and the amendments, the changes that were made to the plan were consistent with her recommendations, which again were based on the result or the comments made by our council at your first meeting. So I just want to thank all of you again, the City Art Board. Thank you publicly, and thank you, Mr. Cepeda, for your commitment, and I know that you're stretched. And I'm really serious. I hope we can have our department where we don't have, it seems like, I've said this before, museums is thrown into quality of life, but everything we do here at City Council is quality of life. So sometimes I feel like, you know, it's like, where do we put this particular committee, or where do we put this? Oh, let's put it in quality of life. And I mean, we have transportation in quality of life. So that's as a point of explanation as to how diverse that committee is, or that department. So I hope that along with the sustainability department, we'll have an art department, because I think we've grown so much, and and I don't know if it would be called an art department, but something that doesn't just throw, you know, like when you're tested, you see if your spaghetti's cooked and you throw it up in the ceiling and you say, oh, it's stuck. So yeah, that's where it belongs. So thank you very much, Mr. Cepeda, Ms. Fryermuth, and Ms. Courtney, and to the entire board for your presentation and your hard work. And also to Ms. Lynn Gallagher. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flores, Mayor.
Thank you, and I apologize, Councilor Vasquez, that I overlooked you. I owe you a lunch for that.
It's all right. We'll go to Texas Roadhouse, to my district. No, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lorenzo. I appreciate your presentation, and likewise share the sentiment from my fellow councilors here about taking some of the recommendations to heart. You know, both the professionalism of the consultant, but of you and the City Art Board, and being able to bring back these changes in such a thoughtful way is really appreciated. I thought the entire public art master plan was done with a great deal of professionalism, and I think it looks amazing. So thank you for that. Couple comments on the plan, pieces of the plan here that I think are really great. I think the mentorship piece is really excellent, those opportunities for local artists to develop potential careers, right, even beyond Las Cruces to be commissioned. I'd be proud to have a Las Cruces artist be commissioned in a big city after they get their start here, right, so that we could showcase some of our local talent in other places. That'd be great. So thank you on the thoughtfulness of putting that together. The community engaged collaborations, I was just thinking about our experience that we had last week with the artist who wants to do a couple of projects, and I felt like that might fit into that space, right? Because I've been thinking, okay, how do members of the community organically approach the city, not when it's a city or like an art board commission project, but they have a great idea, they say, hey, this is what we want to bring to our community, and having a space for those people to do that is so important, and it sounds like this is kind of the place where that fits within the plan.
Absolutely.
So thank you. I do want to comment also on the artist rosters in terms of that ongoing registration. I think that's something that you know I would support if it had that ongoing registration opportunities for folks to get into an artist roster more than in a year time cycle, because that seems like, you know, you'd be out for an entire year participating in city projects if you didn't make the deadline. But I think we should be small and flexible enough as a community that folks could get involved and on that roster throughout the year. I think that'd be great. I do have one question in terms of the artist selection process, and I'm thinking about places like Chicano Park in Barrio Logan in San Diego, if you're familiar with that area. Places like Lincoln Park in El Paso before it was demolished, that was underneath the Spaghetti Bowl, right? But that big project took it over. To me, those were really representative areas of the community that weren't brought to the community by kind of like the conventional selection process, right? They were organic expressions of a community that had pride in their culture and that had pride in their neighborhood, and it became a national historic place by virtue of people painting their visions of their culture and of their community and of their people, and it wasn't like this you know, bureaucratic process to do that. And so I just want to make sure that, especially with this community engaged collaborations, that we can still do stuff like that in this community, because I think you will start to see, if the process becomes cumbersome for folks to get on city property or to commission these big public art projects, is that they'll go to private property owners and then they'll be able to express themselves, maybe not according to what is outlined in the public art master plan, but making the plan flexible enough for those folks to do both of those things, and to want to work with the city ultimately, right? To say, yes, I had a great experience working with Las Cruces Public Art and with the city. So just want to make sure, you know, kind of when we're thinking about that vision of like that organic vision for the community, that this plan embraces that, because I know you also have a mural guide and a guide for private property owners, so wouldn't want it to discourage kind of like, we only want to paint this here and we only want to paint stories of Billy the Kid here and that kind of thing, you know. So but it seems like a lot of those things are addressed in the flexibility that this plan has. The liability piece, I know we talked at length about that in the past, and I was actually told that we could waive liability when we wanted to and when we needed to. Not saying that we should in all instances, but it brings me back to the conversation about a lecturer at the museum needing $1 million liability insurance just to talk about the history of the Mesilla Valley or something, like standing on behind a podium, right? You have to have insurance to do that if you want to get paid by the city to do that. To me, seems a little bit extreme and exclusive, but whenever it's appropriate, you know, waiving liability, especially for big art projects that are maybe going to involve like kids or something, you know, that kind of stuff where it might not be feasible for every artist to have liability, you know, it would be good to just think about that. And I know that's more of an administrative decision than anything.
Sure.
And lastly, I do support the funding public art proposal that I'm sure you guys are working on, codifying that percentage for public art funding. I do look forward to seeing that resolution. I think we need that. And with that, I think that's it. Thank you, Lorenzo, and thank you, Meg.
Thank you,
and all
Councilor.
the members of the art board. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? Members of the public? Okay. Seeing none. Christine?
This is on the motion to approve Resolution 20-111. Councilor Abeta Stevie?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gandara?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, item 6.3.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo. 6.3, which is Council Bill number 20-021.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion made by Councilor Vasquez, second by Councilor Flores. And while David's making his way over here, Gabe, you won't have to pay for it, I'll pay for it. The lunch.
Oh, thank you.
Steak and lobster, okay?
Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Put the myth, put the rumor, to bed all these rumors that you always have to pay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, good afternoon. David Dolan once again. Before you is an ordinance related to the establishment of additional policy review committees. As you're aware, it is a best practice to create public policy in a transparent discussion with city staff, experts, elected officials, and community members. Under the proposed ordinance, we would establish 4 additional policy review committees formally through this ordinance. Their recommendations would be advisory to you as the City Council, and as they make those recommendations, they are not binding on you, as whatever action is ultimately presented to you, whether it is in an ordinance or a resolution, would ultimately fall to your responsibility. It amends the previously adopted policy review committee ordinances, and it uses previously reserved sections when that ordinance was created within the municipal code. As I'd indicated, it creates formalizes 4 new policy review committees. Each of them within the exhibit to the ordinance has their own specific purpose statements and outlined duties. 3 counselors to each of them would be appointed by you through your actions through a separate resolution that I have drafted for your considerations on these 4 committees at the next City Council meeting on March 16th. And as they're proposed, it includes 4 additional ex officio members to be added and to be resolved as part of those specific resolutions. There is an asterisk listed on the PowerPoint, because if you want to expand that membership, you may do so up to 7 members. And if you would like to change that, now is the time to do that within that for each policy review committee. Under the proposed policy review committees, there are 3 continuing policy review committees that we had established before the end of the practice last calendar year. They are health, housing, and quality of life. The new one, or the combined one, is the 3 that were previously combined into 1, transportation, sustainability, and infrastructure. They are all interconnected in their activities, and previously we had a separate transportation and infrastructure committee, and as well as sustainability, and we discussed a lot of the same items on each of those committees. So that's why staff made the recommendation, with advice of the previous committee made up of counselors, to combine these together into 1. With that, I stand for questions, and those are your standard council options, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, David. Councilor Flores Bencomo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Dollahan. So did I read correctly that, and you stated correctly that, and did I understand all of that correctly, that the City Council actually does the appointments up here? And how, if that's so, how do we go about it?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Flores, based on the Policy Review Committee ordinance that you adopted, the overall arching one, that this ordinance amends, it is done via a resolution. So we will, that is a discussion on today's cue sheet under board appointments. That's what we did with the Economic Development Committee. At the last meeting, you all expressed an interest as to who would be interested in serving on the respective committees. That is on your cue sheet today under the board appointment discussion. And then we will bring forward a resolution at your March 16th meeting with 4 separate resolutions, one for each committee, with the respective counselors' names listed in that, along with not necessarily names for the ex officio members, but who they may represent. And that will probably involve some discussion at your next meeting. So, and if you would like to increase the number of ex officio members or change the language that says up to 7, then you may do so today. But those appointments for the counselors are done by separate resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Dollahan.
You're welcome. Let's see who else. Councilor Bencomo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Dollahan. I guess my question in terms of appointees was ex officio members. Oh, never mind. It says at large. I was wondering if they have to be from the district, but they don't have to be.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Bencomo, we did that on purpose so they can represent either a professional group, NMSU, a special interest group, or an at-large member. They don't have to do so. So they can just be a general citizen that has a concern on any one item.
And these are going to be open to the public, right, these meetings?
Yes, yes, specifically for policy review committees, as well as with the Economic Development Policy Review Committees, we will be doing public agendas, approval of minutes, and everything will be done in a public setting. That will allow for more members of the council to attend without violating Open Meetings Act, but the 3 city councilors who are appointed to that respective PRC are the only voting members to that PRC. So,
okay.
And it is a public forum, it is a public meeting and a formally noticed public meeting. We will advertise the agenda 72 hours in advance and the like.
Wonderful, thank you. My last question is around, I remember us having this conversation that there would be other select committees that had more to do with more internal processes. Is that going to be through resolution form as well? And when will we hear about those other committees?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Bencomo, the mayor has established the Finance Select Committee. That was done by his action. The other 2 that were previously had that were under the old PRC process were public safety and communications, primarily at internal communications. Those committees can either be established by the mayor or you as the council bringing forth a recommendation to establish those committees.
Anyone else? Members of the public? Seeing none. Christine?
This is on the motion to approve Ordinance 2913. Councilor Abeyta-Stube?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gandara?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, 6.4, Council Bill number 20-022.
Move to approve. I'll second that.
Motion made by Councilor Vasquez, second by Councilor Sorg. Looks like Rob Cabello is going to be discussing this.
Mayor, Council, I'm Robert Cabello with Legal, and I'm here to present a proposed ordinance amending the definition of select committee. And the general purpose of the proposed ordinance today, back on January 6th, this council made an amendment changing the nature of select committees, as David just spoke about right now, and with ordinance 2908, and this amendment only changes the definition to make it consistent with those changes. And so back again, January 6th, the way that select committees was changed was that the entire city council now could create a select committee, not just the mayor. It was the recommendations are non-binding and allows the city manager to assign members and expands the purpose of the select committees to include recommendations on the city strategic plan. For sort of observation, on page 587, there is a legislative format of the changes. Again, it's a very minor change just to change the definition. So yes, this makes the changes to make it consistent with the changes that occurred with Ordinance 2908 on January 6th. And with that, open for questions.
Okay, questions? No questions? How about members of the public? Seeing none? Christine? Hurry.
This is on the motion to approve Ordinance 2914. Councilor Abeyta-Stuvey?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondeta?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes, I was just kidding. You didn't have to go that fast. Okay. Item 6.5, Council Bill number 20-023, ordinance number 2915.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Vasquez, second by Councilor Sorg, and it looks like Rob's going to also present this as well.
Mayor, Council, again, Robert Cabello with the legal, and I'm here to present an ordinance permitting UTVs, utility terrain vehicles, on city roads. They're off-road vehicles. So under the current law, off-highway vehicles, UTVs and ATVs, are prohibited on paved roads, both by city ordinance and by state law. However, there is an exception. NMSA 66-3-1101C authorizes the city to pass an ordinance that permits UTVs or ATVs, or both, on city paved roads or city-owned roads. As an example of this, the Doñana County has its own ordinance 29-2017, which allows UTVs and ATVs on their roads. Now, some of the exceptions, if we were to pass an ordinance, they have to have certain requirements. It allows the city to set its own speed limits. UTVs or ATVs have to have certain requirements, and these requirements are: it has to have mirrors, mufflers, brakes, it has to have at least one tail light and at least one headlight. The operator has to be permitted or have a driver's license, and has to have the special permits for driving off-highway vehicles. The driver has to have insurance. They have to use goggles that are sort of required by the Off-Road Highway Vehicle Act. And the drivers that are under 18 have to have a helmet while operating the vehicle on city roads. There's also a requirement that the drivers have to follow the general rules of the Motor Vehicle Act, and with some exceptions, which are the ones required for the differences between UTVs and registering UTVs as opposed to other vehicles like trucks and cars. So the proposed ordinance defines UTV. There's already a definition there, but there's a definition for recreational vehicles, utility vehicles. It's the same thing as a UTV. That's on page 615. Now, it permits UTVs on city roads. That has to meet those requirements that I talked about, having mirrors, mufflers, brakes. It sets the speed limit of UTVs at 45 miles per hour, or the posted speed limit. And they must follow the same relevant parking and driving laws that all of us other drivers do. Before I open it up to questions, I'd like to point out that there was one call to administration late this morning from Trent Doolittle from NMDOT, and he indicated that on state-owned roads that are within the city, so North Main, parts of Highway 478, the parts of Loma that go over I-25 and Picacho, so those state-owned roads, that even if we had passed this ordinance, that state highway patrolmen could still cite people for operating vehicles. And that's just a consideration that he wanted the council to be aware of, and I'm letting you guys know what his concerns were. And with that, I'll open up the questions.
Thanks, Rob. Just a couple things before I go to council. And I had posed that question to Captain Williams, who's here from the state police, and he may be able to give us an update. But two things that you mentioned, or one thing, when you talk about goggles, I presume that's when there's no windshield. I mean, you don't expect them to wear goggles if it's an enclosed vehicle, do you?
Mayor, that's correct. That is the requirement, the goggles, and I didn't really explain it completely, but yes, that was the purpose, is an alternative to having a windshield. Not all UTVs have windshields. just like motorcycles don't necessarily have them. And so there's an alternative to having the helmet and other things or goggles so you can drive, you'll get hit with debris.
And maybe you discussed it, but I didn't see it, but in the last presentation we had is they are not allowed on highways.
So,
You know, like the highway,
Mayor.
Interstate 10, Interstate 25.
Mayor, Council, so that would be, those are state-owned, so those would not be included in this ordinance.
Well, because I think that isn't the minimum speed on the freeway, isn't there a certain speed? And then this one can't go faster than 45, because I think if you do 45 on Interstate 10 or I-25, you could get a ticket for going too slow.
Mayor, Council, that'd be correct.
Okay. Okay, I just want to clarify that. Okay, so now we go to Councilor Abeta-Stuvey, Councilor Flores.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. One of the things that I was looking at is the different requirements for the vehicle itself. And I went to a resource myself, I'll say my dad, on this one, since he was very familiar in trying to help out in Santa Fe getting a UTV park, because he wanted people to be able to drive. But I asked about some of the issues and the differences that UTVs have on the road. And this might be something for our consideration should we move forward on this. And you brought up a good question about the use of goggles. If a UTV does have a windshield, that we might want to require it to be a Department of Transportation regulation type windshield, so that if it were to be involved in a crash, that it wouldn't be braking in the same way. And same with the tires as well, to be and Department of Transportation rated tires, since I do know that some of the tires are different because they're made to go on dirt, they're made to climb there, but what it does, it acts as a grip, and that acts differently on pavement and can pose a greater risk for flipping. And so I think those are just considerations that we might want to look at. Thank you.
Very good, I appreciate that. Councilor Flores?
Well, my concern was about the windows and not the tires, but thank you for that, Councilor Abeta-Stuvey, for that edification and clarification. But my understanding is that UTVs, not to be confused with ATVs, UTVs are pretty much required to comply with a standard windshield, with standard this, with standard that, and so and that's pretty much something that comes out of either the state, maybe officer can explain that, or as part of our state statute. So perhaps that can be clarified later, but I know that in speaking of some of the UTV community and the presentation at our work session, was that in January? Seems like such a long time ago.
I think it was right after your election.
Oh, okay. No, it was just last October, but it just seems like a zillion years ago. Or it seems like only yesterday, I don't know. But yeah, there are a lot of safety features in UTVs, and my understanding is that the UTV operators that I spoke with made it very clear, and their presentation also was that they were not going to be driving on city streets necessarily to go joyriding or whatever, go cruising down Loman Boulevard or whatever, but to get to their destination points. And I've received, I think all of us have received tons of emails from concerned constituents who believe that this ordinance, should we pass it, is also authorizing ATVs on the road, and I want to make that very clear to our public that it isn't for ATVs, it's only for UTVs, which are regulated by the state and are far safer in many respects. So That's what and thank you very much, Mr. Cabello, for your thorough, very well prepared presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Before we get to Councilor Vasquez, this gentleman that's recording, I don't have a problem with you recording, but if you don't mind moving over here with the light, and then also, by the way, these are being recorded, and you can actually play them back. It's just that I'm right in the line of vision here. Thanks. Councilor Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Cabello, for the presentation. I do have, so I'm supportive of this. I think I've, had an opportunity to ride in UTVs. Never been able to buy one, but maybe in the future would entertain that if I can afford them, because they're pretty pricey models out there now that do everything that kind of a modern car would do, but also you can take them off-road. And I think there's a lot of appeal to living in a place like Las Cruces and being able to use a UTV, side-by-side Ranger, whatever it is, to get out to enjoy some of the trails and the areas, especially the Doña Ana's and around the Picacho area, where I know a lot of folks like to use these types of vehicles. So I do know that they're definitely up to par. I do have a question, though, about the state roads issue that got brought up today from the New Mexico Department of Transportation. And I think the message was that if a UTV user was on a state road like Main Street, that the state police could still ticket them. So I know we do have somebody here perhaps to address that, Mayor.
I don't know. I don't know if Captain Williams wants to do that. Probably, for the record, the state police can give you a ticket anywhere throughout the entire state. So whether it's a city road, county road, state road.
Unless you tell me you're related to the mayor. And then...
Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. So I must confess I'm ill-prepared to address this.
Captain, do you mind stating your name, please?
Yes, Captain Jesse Williams, State Police. Sorry about that. So I'm ill-prepared to address this. I didn't realize it was going to be brought up today. However, I will say that what the DOT has brought up is correct for those state roads. They're not allowed on state roads at this point, so that would be cause for us to pull these vehicles over. It doesn't mean we're going to have these operations where we're going to be targeting UTVs in the city limits, but it is possible, I suppose. So I will do some more research on this and try and get some more information on that, but at this point I don't see an issue on our side.
Thanks, Captain.
Thank you, Captain. I do have a follow-up question to that. I know other communities in New Mexico have adopted these same ordinances. I think Roswell, I believe Silver City, maybe Carlsbad as well. Do you have any idea of how they have interacted with state roads in those communities, or how your department has?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilman Vasquez, I don't, but I will say that our typical operation is to be outside of city limits.
Sure.
So I don't foresee an issue enforcement-wise with us.
Okay, thank you, Captain.
Thank you, Captain. We appreciate that. We appreciate all you and your officers do.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, for the record, Councilor Vasquez and members of council, the state roads that are inside the city limits, as pointed out to us by DOT, is all of US Highway 70, which is West Picacho, North Main Street, all of North Main Street, all the way over the Oregon Pass. That's part of US Highway 70. I-25 and I-10, and that includes the underpasses and the overpasses of the interstates. So hopefully, if you're crossing those roads, you do it prudently and within the law, but you should clearly not be on Highway 70 or the two interstates. As we've allowed previously in the ordinance, you could always cross city rights-of-way. I would assume the state DOT is going to allow you to cross their rights-of-way as you're getting from one point to the other. I will verify with NMDOT. I think there is a portion of South Main Street that is still within their jurisdiction, but all other state highways, which include University, Valley Drive, and the like, have been, Loman was a state highway, University is a state highway. They've, while they're still designated state highways, they are under the city of Las Cruces jurisdiction, so normally state police would not enforce on those regards because they've been turned over to us.
so over the years. So we will get the exact listing, and we will share with you, and we will share with the public.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. Well, with that, I think, Mayor, one thing I would advise and staff is if this ordinance passes today, to have an educational resource on the city's website, particularly for UTV riders, so that they know about this potential conflict. Right? At least we should let people know that, hey, if you get pulled over on a state highway and by state police, that it's out of the city's jurisdiction, just to make sure that folks can make those decisions on their own if they would like to use those roads or not. But also in general, I think Councilor Flores brought up a good point. Not a lot of people know the difference between ATVs, UTVs, dirt bikes, quads, all that. A lot of folks are going to assume that because one thing is legal, that everything else may be legal. So also having an educational piece out if this ordinance passes, in the form of a press release, but also a dedicated information page hosted by the city that says, here's what's allowed. I think that would help with the public education piece of this if we decide to go forward with this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. And that's a great idea to have that educational piece, whether it's in the local media, newspapers, and or a little stuffer in our utility bills. That way they can put down pictures of what is acceptable and what isn't. Because I agree with what you're saying. A lot of people think we're talking about ATVs that don't have lights, that don't have brakes. I mean, some of these UTVs cost more than cars and have the EPA emissions and mufflers, and they have to have mufflers. So, probably along the lines, Councilor Abeyta-Stuvey, before we go to an actual vote, if you want to, just as an added measure, have an amendment, if it's not in there, that needs to have DOT-approved tires, DOT-approved windshield, and have a muffler, I think that would be good.
I would like to make that amendment.
Okay, sure. Okay, so we have Councilor Bencomo.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain. I have a couple questions. You said they have seatbelts, right? Yes, I see the people in the back saying yes. That's awesome. Okay. And then I read that an operator under 18 has to wear a helmet. Do passengers under 18 also have to wear a helmet? Is that in here? You're so safe. Wonderful. I personally wouldn't ride one of these. They look kind of scary, but that's just me. I prefer full doors. But is that in the ordinance? I don't remember reading if passengers under 18.
Yes, it's in the
It is?
I believe. I didn't read passengers.
I do not have to take the trailer, so if they are on roads, I'm sure it's going to be on back roads. It's going to be very minimal because those tires get damaged from the pavement as opposed to out in the dirt. So they don't want that investment to be. That's not their goal, is my understanding, not to just be right around in the street. They want to get to where they want to go in the desert, but sometimes it's more convenient to use a city street that's on its way over there.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that context for sure. I think I'm just thinking about younger kids, if they are going to be on the road for any transitional period between where they're going and leaving their home, that we try to maximize the safety for
Now,
children.
I wonder, and we'll see by show of booze, if you wanted to if we could put a limit of, say, you have to be at least 18 years old or older to be driving this on a city street. I don't know if we can even do that.
I don't know. I mean, if you're 16 and you have a valid driver's license, I don't see why you couldn't just drive it as well. But I'm curious for passengers that are 5 years old or whatever, right? Like if there were to be an accident on a city street, just trying to minimize the damage done to bodies, to human bodies, for me is important. And then I have just a curiosity question in terms of, I assume I know the answer to this already, but in terms of like DWIs, and I assume that all those apply. Thank you. The officers.
I think it even applies on a bicycle.
No, I was told a bicycle needed to be motorized.
Oh, okay.
I checked. Right, right, Chief? Motorized bicycle? See? That's it for me. As long as for me, it's important that we see helmets for passengers under 18.
Mayor, Council, as a suggestion for a change to the ordinance to incorporate the changes from Councilor Bencomo would be to add to Section G
Rob, can you talk to the mic, please?
I'm sorry. To add to Section G, which is on page 613 of the agenda. This ordinance shall incorporate the Off-Highway Motor Vehicle Act 66.3.1001 et.sec. So that would have the entire section and would incorporate that's for all the safety measures for those vehicles. I'm sorry.
Mayor and Council, and with the words as amended, NMSA section as amended.
That's correct, as amended. So it'll change as a state legislature changes it. So as amended would be perfect.
So may I?
Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attorney Cabello, as amended insofar as Councilor Bencomo's recommendation, I think I was busy trying to get back to my page here, so I spaced out.
Mayor, Councilor Flores, no. It would be the Off-Highway Motor Vehicle Act, Section 60, NMSA Section 66.3-1001 et.sec. as amended. So whenever the legislature, New Mexico legislature, made some changes regarding safety, it would be incorporated into our ordinance.
Oh, I see. So insofar as Councilor Bencomo's recommendation that everyone under 18, because the part that I read said that if the driver is under 18, that person must wear a helmet. But Councilor Bencomo is talking about, and I agree with her entirely, that anyone under the age of 18 should wear a helmet. Passengers under the age of 18.
That would be, go ahead. I think Lieutenant Story can answer that question.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Lieutenant Jeremy Story with the Police Department. Mr. Mayor, Councilor, the New Mexico state statute does not require or allow us to supersede those requirements. So in the state statute, it requires that the driver or any person who's riding in a motor or off-highway motor vehicle wear a helmet that's under 18 years old. So that's just a guarantee. We cannot change that anyways, even if we wanted to. So it's required no matter what.
Well, I'm sorry. Can you state that again?
Under the state statute for off-highway recreational vehicles, it requires that anybody 18 years old, whether they're driving or riding as a passenger, must wear a helmet.
But it doesn't say anything about under 18.
Under 18 must. 18 and over, it does not require it. Under 18, whether they're driving or a passenger, they must wear a helmet.
Perdón. Thank you, Mr. Story.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any other, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Cabello, for your presentation. I know that at our work session, there were questions about data, right? Like how many, I don't know that you know how many are registered currently, but what sort of tickets have been given as it relates to speeding, no helmets. Is that something that, Lieutenant, you would have? Well, yeah, they keep data. Well, he should.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Ganda asked it.
Yes.
I don't have the data with me. If it's from the beginning of last year to this year, we have very good measures or methods to pull that data. I just don't have access to it right now.
Okay. I was hoping that from the work session to present that we would be prepared to have that data to be as part of this conversation. I think it's important, right, as we are contemplating passing this, because also my recommendation would be to amend this to suggest that if this is truly what people want from the ATV or UTV, excuse me, group, and they're only using it to get from point A to point B, then we should really talk about limiting the speed limit to 25. And I think I read in there that it can go up to 45. And so I don't think they would be that overly concerned about it just being 25 miles per hour to get to a destination, right, on city roadway. The other thing is, would it behoove us to include what state police or state NMDOT is suggesting, that they're not allowed to travel on these state highways? And should we put that on there, in there?
Mayor Pro Tem, let me just share this with you. I think if you were to do that, it probably, I don't know, we'll let them speak. I think a lot of the trails that they use will be off of North Main and Highway 70. And I think if we were to put a limit of 25 miles an hour on there, I know that if I was driving up on Highway 70 and someone's doing 25, I might hit, might run into them. So that might be a concern going that slow. I think the way it was written at the 45, and I think you heard the captain saying, that's really not their main focus. I'm sure if someone's just driving pretty erratically like anyone else, any law enforcement is going to find out what are they doing. But I mean, if they're just going about their business and doing their thing, I mean, I don't see why they would just target them. I mean, I would think that they are, and they have everything, as long as they have our license, registration, all the things that need to be. And if we put these requirements on the DOT, approved tires and windshield, and then also have a muffler, I mean, that's just my point of view.
Okay, Mayor. So I just want to be clear that I think you, along with me, have received the same amount of emails with people totally against this, for speeding, for safety, for noise, and all the other things. So I just want to make sure that not only do we have the people that are for it, that the people that are against it have sort of the same representation here, right? That we're hearing about it all, so that people feel like we've listened to what they've had to say. They took the time to send out the emails and whatnot. So I just want people to be very clear that I received a ton of emails against it for the things that I've just stated.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, how many people out in the audience would like to, thank you, Lieutenant, would like to talk about this issue? Just raise your hand. 1, 2, just 2? Okay. 3. All right, let's do 3 minutes each then. If you want to come forward, sir, just need you to state your name, and then the other 2, if you want to make your way down here, that would be great.
Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, I'm Mike Matthews, Captain with New Mexico Game and Fish. Our agency was given the administration of the OHV program by the legislature when it was created, and I just wanted to help with a little clarification. What they've been telling you about the state roads, that's in the state statute, so that's the way it is. However, other counties that have passed these rules have applied for amendments to allow certain state roads to have OHVs on them. So that is an option if you guys decide to go that way. Grant County's one, they did it with Highway 15 and State Highway 35. So that is an option, just so you're aware of that. You talked about data. We write hundreds of OHV tickets a year, but in the city, probably only 2 or 3 a year. And mainly that's because they're not allowed in the city, and that they're basically in violation when they're on one of those roads. So it's not a huge issue, but just OHVs in general, that's part of what we do. We're out in the field with them. Most of the violations are lack of registration, a few safety equipment violations with minors, and that type of thing. And
Captain,
yes,
what did
sir.
you say that was an exception for what?
For the state roads?
The city would file?
Yeah, I don't know that the process is exactly, but the counties have filed an amendment with the state to allow certain roads to have access with OHVs. So it could be something to clarify. One of the problems we do have with administering the law enforcement is it's very confusing, because you can do it in one county, you can't do this in another county, cross this road, you can't do that. So I would encourage you guys to keep it as simple with the state law as you can. That way it's clear for people, it's easy for everybody to deal with that way.
Great. Oh, well, I appreciate it very much. Appreciate you coming in today.
You're welcome.
So we have two other individuals want to come forward, please. Just need you to state your name and that's it.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Jeremy Lackey. I'm a Las Cruces resident. I'm a Las Cruces resident and have been my entire life. These UTVs have been something for me that is a great hobby, as well as all of us in the audience today. It's a stress relief for us. It's something we can really get out there and see things that most of the time we really can't see. And just a couple things I wanted to touch on. Most of us are business owners here in town. You know, we're not hooligans. I'm sure the emails you saw, people want to assume just because we're in something like that we're out to do no good and out to be negative and things like that. I can assure you, everyone here in the audience today, that is not our intentions. As well as the 25-mile-an-hour thing, I understand where you're coming from, but that puts us at a risk when we're driving that slow on the road. People are having to go around us, and it adds something to it that's just, in my opinion, not necessary, driving that slow. The 45-mile-an-hour, I think it's perfect, that, especially in an area where it is 55 and over. A couple other things I had to touch on was, like you said, Mayor, the trucks and trailers. We've had a good group of our friends that go out and park, and they come back to their vehicles being broken into. They come back to their tires slashed, tires stolen, the trailers stolen. It's just, when you're out in the middle of nowhere, there's no one there to check and look at those things. So, and for most of us, we do live in the city limits. Our rides aren't that far from where we live. Like for me, I live up off of near Sonoma Elementary. So even for me to leave from my house, I'm automatically breaking the law. And I'm not somebody that does like to break the law. So, approving this today would help me and keep me from being somebody breaking the law. That's something that I don't want to be doing. But unfortunately, it's just, when I do ride, it is something that happens, and I don't like to do that. And it's a lot of hassle to go get the trailer and things, and puts me at a risk for that, as well as all of my other friends and things out there. Other than that, I don't have much else to say. If you have any questions for me as a UTV rider, please feel free to ask. I'm a little nervous. I haven't talked at a city council meeting before, but I do appreciate you having me today.
You're doing great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for me that you might have for somebody that rides or something like that?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, be careful with her. Councilor Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you.
Of course.
Sorry, what was your name?
My name is Jeremy Lackey.
Jeremy Lackey.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lackey, thank you so much for your experiences. And so my question is, do you have small children riding in your UTV?
No, ma'am, I do not. A few of our friends do, and I can assure you every time I've seen it, they have their helmets on. It's just something that they do never want to pose a risk to their own children. I can assure you of that.
Okay, thank you. That was exactly, you were reading my mind. You're a mind reader too, wow.
I try my best, Dan. Like the seatbelt thing I wanted to touch on real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Lackey.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I thought my time was up. I didn't want to keep going.
No, I just meant to thank you for that information, then you want to address another comment.
Okay, most of the new ones come with 4-point harnesses, not typically like a car seat belt, so they are even the extra safe, and they're adjustable for children. Also, they go that small because the 4-seaters, they know that people buy them for having children in the back seat. It's not something for, just adults. It is also sizable for the children, and then they also make, for even smaller children, they do make the seat belt or for the small child seats attachments. Yes, ma'am. So.
I think she was kind of rude to you. I think she just was like telling you to buzz off.
No, I don't think so at all. I just didn't want to go over. I just didn't want to go over my time. I'll sit up here and talk all day to you guys. I don't want to do that. So.
Go ahead and talk.
No. We all have jobs. We have to get back to our jobs. So we just wanted to be supportive today. So thank you all.
I think we had Councilor Vasquez, then Councilor Sorg.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Lackey. So I have a question. That within the UTV community, do you guys have an established group or like a local kind? Is it a nonprofit or just a group of users that?
Some of us are a part of that. There is a nonprofit here. One gentleman that's representing us today. His name is Randall Limon. He is a part of that.
Okay.
Me personally, I go on the rides. I am involved with it, but I am not associated exactly with that. No, sir. But
Okay.
yes, we do a few nonprofit rides. We've raised rides for a few of the deaths that have happened here recently in town. A few of the younger children from Anthony that were recently killed. We did a ride for them, and we made sure to give the family the money. A few other things. Randall Limon, if he could come up here, he's the one that organizes all of those. He's more in depth with that and with the things we've done recently in order to, provide for the family, just like the motorcycles do. We do the same thing. We just have those events off road, so it's no different than that. So yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Limon, what is the name of the nonprofit?
Right now, I'm for Southwest Desert Works. It's a nonprofit.
Excuse me, can you state your name, please?
Randall Limon.
Randall.
Southwest Desert Works?
Yes, sir. It's a nonprofit organization. We have families that reach out to us pretty much on Facebook, either with a death or the house catches on fire, whatever people need help with. We advertise all over Facebook. We advertise not just here, but also El Paso. We do major events. We did one 2 weeks ago for that Oñate player, the 18-year-old. We raised a little bit over $3,000 within just a week notice. We got a bunch of gifts from, businesses, people that ride and that have businesses, gift cards, whatever that they can donate. We did raffles, and we rode from MESILLA Dam all the way to Black Bridge. Of course, there was a lot of trailers out there. I mean, it'd be nice if we don't have to ride or a trailer out there. We can just ride from the city. With it opening up in the city, it would also help out. I can be able to do events at businesses, small businesses. We can, at a restaurant that, that nobody knows about, we can do an event there. We can leave there. We can ride to the next area that we go and ride.
Thank you, Mr. Limon. And the reason I ask is just that I knew that the group existed, and I know you guys are doing some good things for the community, so, wanted to make the public aware of what you do. I think sometimes, especially if you're, recreate outdoors, sometimes, mostly ATVs, not so much UTVs, but get a bad rap, right, because of building roads that aren't supposed to be there, going off-road places where you're not supposed to go.
There's always a bad apple.
Yes,
everywhere.
and there's,
that's going to happen in cars. It's going to happen in motorcycles. It's going to happen anywhere.
Exactly. So I want to thank you because your role in the community as an educator, right, is to make sure that folks are using these vehicles responsibly. And I think that they're a big asset to us in terms of that outdoor recreation economy that we're trying to build. I could picture somebody running a business that, can do a tour of some of the areas outside using UTVs that they could, leave from the city. But I did just want to thank you for that. And then other question for you is, do the majority of the UTVs today have windshields, or is it like an addition that costs a little bit more money, so some have them, some don't?
When you buy them brand new, sometimes they come with them, sometimes they don't. But that's the first thing that people get are windshields.
Yeah.
Because, they don't want the wind in their face. The roof and the windshield's the number one thing. After that, once you spend that, it's all downhill. You get everything else.
You get dirt in your teeth. Is that right?
You go broke.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Limon. I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
When they're talking about not wanting to be on the streets. This is, I just wonder if there's a name for all these parts on these vehicles that are required by law to have a vehicle on a street. Is there a general name for those? Or are we just going to call them legal parts, such as a windshield, such as seat belts, and so on and so forth? Is there a name for those? Oh, you can't see it from there.
Jeremy, I'm going to need you to come forward.
I was going to ask Robert if he knew if there's a name for him.
I thought it'd be best if you got here, and of course Gail said no.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They're just called street legal pieces that
okay.
You add to them most
Very
of the
good.
time? Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. I have gotten a lot of complaints about people that ride certain vehicles, I'm not saying what kind, that are just loud. I even get complaints for vehicles that aren't UTVs either, and other vehicles that are just loud. And this is a matter of enforcing the laws that we have for having a good muffler on a vehicle. Everybody's heard them going down the street. It might be a motorcycle even that does it. And that gives me my concern. As long as these vehicles have all these, say it again?
Street legal
parts.
Parts, yes, sir.
I'm fine with it. I'm okay with it. But we can't seem to even enforce the laws on other vehicles that have no mufflers or bad mufflers and just making noise in the neighborhood. I know the Metro Verde area is very pleased, proud, happy about their neighborhood because it is so peaceful and quiet out there. And when these vehicles that don't have these legal parts, that is a concern.
Of course, one thing if I could add it, our intentions aren't to ride around people's homes. And by passing this law, you're allowing us to take the actual road and bypass their homes much quicker rather than looking for those little side trails that go right behind a house that for whatever reason, whenever they built the home, they put them back there. And that's where a lot of the issue comes from because people want to not take the road by being legal. They want to take these little side trails through neighborhoods, through arroyos, through things like that. Our intention isn't to ride there. Our intention is to get to
I
the
understand.
end goal.
I've heard the argument before.
Of course, yes, sir.
And I agree with that. That's fine. It's just that the complaints that people have are vehicles that are not street legal.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then one thing is also to add to that, we don't remove our mufflers. Our mufflers are part of our warranties, and like you stated, they're very expensive vehicles. So our warranties are very important to us. So if we remove our mufflers, we lose our warranty. It's not something that we want to do. They are also compliant with California emissions laws. They are sold there as well. So it's not something like we're running catless, emissions causing.
I know you are.
Yeah.
I know you are.
Well,
It's not,
and
it's not what I'm talking about.
I can speak for all of us.
I'm talking about those vehicles, not just UTVs, but motorcycles and regular automobiles that don't have. I know those vehicles have to have these mufflers to be spark resistant, so you don't start any fires out in the desert.
That's right, yeah, the spark
or
arresters.
Grasslands or forest or wherever they are.
Yes, sir.
That's fine, and that's okay. I just have one comment to make, and just take this as a comment. Some of these vehicles are used in places they shouldn't be used. They're damaging to the environment, and that is a concern of mine, and that's probably not a situation what we have here, but I just wanted to make that comment.
Of course.
To try to be respectful to the environment that you're using them in.
And then
one place that could be a problem is the Rio Grande River itself when you are using it on the riverbed there.
Of course.
They get pretty rowdy there.
I can imagine, yes, sir.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you, City Council. I do appreciate it. Thank you today.
Jeremy, let me just ask you a question totally different than these accessories. What would you gather that you, if you were to take like a blueprint or a footprint of where you drive, would you say 1 square mile would be adequate, or is it even further?
It's most likely even further. Some of us live down in the valley. Some of us live up, like you said.
No, I mean when you're driving, like once you get to your destination.
Okay.
And the reason why I ask is, and I can't have council comment on this, but it just came up with what Councilor Sorg was saying. We may have even options to even get even more land up on the East Mesa where our park is, where we're going to have, and we may want to get some additional land. And I just was curious what.
Yeah. A mile radius is that's a good number to do. A lot of us, we take the scenic route is a good way to put it. So we're going to look at something, we take the scenic route rather than having just a little playground area where we just do a constant circle. I don't want to look at it that way because that's really not what we do. We're trail riding, so we're out to look at different things. Look at, a few of us are bird watchers. That's kind of a weird thing I'm sure you didn't think of, or avid bird watchers. So we can go out and look at that and see things like that. So to just
Did you read Councilor Sorg's bio? Because he's a bird watcher.
Oh, really? No, I didn't. Oh, good for me, I guess, huh? But yeah, so see, we enjoy things like that. We enjoy to drive up and then take a hike, things of that nature. So to just put us in a 1 mile radius, I want to agree with you, but I also want to...
Oh, no.
I understand.
No, you guys do your thing and go. I'm just saying if we had an opportunity to have a designated place addition to where you guys go.
That would be really neat. That would be beneficial for the ATV riders because they're totally different from us, like we said, but to have a little area where they could just play around, and maybe some younger children, we could have a small area for them so they could learn and practice and have safe riding tendencies, because that's, where it all starts is the learning phase. And once they're able to learn to ride and be safe, then when they get older, they're able to also be safe, and it applies to their driving as well once they get their driver's license. So yeah, that's a great idea, Mayor.
Great. Any other questions from council? Councilor Sorg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be clear, what concerns me is enforcing the laws that we have, whether this adds one more dimension that our police department has more problems in trying to enforce. That's something to consider. But I just want to point out again that enforcing the laws for noise and all the other parts of a vehicle that is used is really important to me. And I know we're short of officers on our police department, and this is something we want to be careful about so that we don't cause more problems. Thank you, Mayor.
Agreed, Councilor. I completely agree with you, and I think by passing this today, that's going to enable the police department to not waste their time by pulling us law-abiding citizens over who have insurance, who have our registration, who have our OHV tags, to be able to just freely drive down the road and enjoy ourselves rather than be bothered by, a traffic stop that's just unnecessary.
Well, thank you, Jeremy, but I'll just say, and kind of along the lines of what Councilor Sorg is getting at, so this, if it does move forward, which it appears to be, just know that we're looking to you all as being the leaders in this, making sure it's done correctly and appropriately, and because, like anything else, if we get too many complaints on one particular thing, this can always be amended and included to, require this or require that. So, if your group and they know that, hey, don't take your mufflers off, don't do that, or things of this nature.
Of course.
Okay?
Yeah, holding ourselves responsible and holding one another responsible is important, and that's something we, take pride in, as Randall said.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Councilor Abates. Oh, that's right. You're going to do the amendment.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I would like to motion the amendment to add the additional requirements that if there is a windshield, that it needs to be a safety glass windshield, and that the...
DOT approved. No?
For that one, I'm okay with it just being a safety glass windshield, but I would like to have the DOT approved tires.
Okay. On the windshield, Councilor, windshield, if it has one, and if not, then goggles?
Then the goggles.
Okay.
Whatever the state statute requires.
And then also the DOT tires. And did you want to also include that they must have a muffler?
Yes, please.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so second by Mayor Pro Tem Gondara. So to clarify, your amendment is also, if it's not further stated, to include a... Jennifer, did you want to talk on this?
Mayor and Council, the language, as Mr. Cabello has indicated, incorporates the entire state statute by reference. I don't think that amendment is necessary as long as we are incorporating the entire state statute, which would include the vehicle requirements.
That I just stated?
I believe so. I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but Rob can read the portion.
Yes. Mayor, Council, the amendment would be this ordinance shall incorporate the Off-Highway Motor Vehicle Act, NMSA subsection 663-1001 et sec as amended.
Okay, so I guess the real question was whether or not these were included. And so, Jennifer, if we were to, as a matter of reassurance, I mean, that wouldn't be anything. We could have it included if later on, if it turns out that this is just a duplication, then leave it off, but as a means of just a reassurance to the public. Is that okay? Okay, so then it's been moved in second that we include a DOT-approved tires, and if it has a windshield, it has to be safety windshield. If not, they must use goggles and must have a muffler. And there was a motion and a second. Now, this is on the amendment. So any questions on the amendment? Okay, on the amendment right now. So, Christine?
This is on the motion to amend Ordinance 2915 to include the wording of DOT-approved tires, safety glass windshield, and a required muffler. Councilor Abeyta-Stuvey?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondara?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, now we're on the main motion, so any further questions? Members of the public? Okay, seeing none. Christine?
This is on the motion to approve Ordinance 2915 as amended. Councilor Abeyta-Stuvey?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondara?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, so when, just a clarification, when does this become legal?
I think it's 5 days after it's published.
Mayor, it's 5 days after publication, which would be on Sunday, so 5 days from Sunday.
5 days from Sunday, so you guys are going to have to hang tight and drive your trailers out there, okay? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Rob. So now we go to board appointments. So first one is going to be planning and zoning at-large position. I'll need a motion and a second to reappoint Harvey Gordon.
Mayor, we don't need a motion in a
I don't need
second.
this one for the at-large?
It's your appointment, so we don't need that.
Okay, great. Wow. Okay, so then we're going to reappoint Harvey Gordon at large, Planning and Zoning. Russ Smith, reappointment by Councilor Bencomo, Planning and Zoning District 4. Levon Muniz, reappointment by Councilor Beta Stuvey to District 2. Reappointment by myself to Eli. Does this one need a vote? No? To Eli Guzman, Parks and Rec at large position. And reappointment, Cassie McClure, reappointment by Mayor Pro Tem Gondara to the Parks and Rec District 1. All right. So now we're going to go to alternate municipal judge, Morgan Lyman. Need a motion and a second for.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Flores, second by Councilor Vasquez to appoint Morgan Lyman. Yes, Councilor.
Mr. Mayor? I did not know I approved Morgan Lyman. Was that a person in the list that was given to us?
Mayor and Council, our internal auditor was looking at some of the entire list and verifying information. Mr. Lyman was removed from your original list because it was believed that he was not a current practicing attorney in New Mexico. However, our internal audit discovered that he is a current practicing attorney and is eligible to be on the list.
Oh, so this is to be on the list, not to be the judge only?
Correct.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
So it's been moved in second. So Christine?
This is on the motion to appoint Morgan Lyman as an alternative municipal judge. Councilor Abeta Stuvey?
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Sorg?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondara?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, so now for discussion only, I presume you're wanting to get an idea of who wants to serve on the housing, the health, quality of life, and transportation PRCs. Is that what this is? Why we have it like this?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. So on the old PRCs, did we have a former PRC on housing? Yes. And who were the members of that? So
Councilor Gondara, Flores.
Okay, and who else? Smith or Ekman?
I believe that was it, just Flores and Gondara.
Okay, so do we need, we'll at least cover the minimum from the old one, and then if anyone wants to join, then we'll ask about that.
We're looking it up right now just to verify the membership, but I know it was Gondara and Flores, but I don't believe it was anybody else.
Okay. How about on the health?
It was Councilor Ekman, Flores, and Gondara.
Okay, and quality of life?
Gondara and Councilor Vasquez.
And the last one?
Okay, correction. Let me just run through the list. Housing was Gondara, Flores, and Vasquez. Infrastructure and transportation had Councilor Smith, Sorg, and Vasquez. Sustainability was different. It had Vasquez and Councilor Sorg. Transportation had the same, which was Smith, Sorg, and Vasquez. Quality of life was Gondara, Vasquez, and you, Mayor. And then health. Health was former Councilor Ekman, Councilor Flores, and Councilor Gondara. Health.
Okay, so on the housing, we had Councilors Gondara, Flores, and Vasquez. Did those three wish to remain on this?
Mayor,
On housing, PRC.
unless somebody else really wants it, yes. I do want to remain quality of life and transportation infrastructure, so if someone else wants housing, I'm okay with that.
Mayor, I'm interested in the housing.
Okay, so you want to put
Well, I don't have any right now, so I can't trade any, but.
Right. No, I'm sorry. That's right.
I'm fine giving up my spot.
So you're okay
Yes.
giving that up? So then it would be Gondara, Flores, and Bencomo on the housing. Okay. And on the health, did you want to, Councilor Abeta-Stuvey, come on that? Or?
Yes, please.
Okay. So then it would be Councilors Abeta-Stuvey, Flores, and Gondara. And then on quality of life, Gondara, Vasquez, and myself. And then the last one, it was Smith, Sorg, and Vasquez. Did you want to stay on that, Councilor Abeta-Stuvey, or did you want Councilor Bencomo to be on there?
You can have it.
Oh, really?
Yes, I'm okay having this one as well. These are,
Okay.
thank you.
Did you need me to repeat this, David, or did your fantastic memory pick this up?
I think we got him, Mayor.
All right, good. All right,
So
so
do you
then you'll
really-
come back later for reappointments then? Okay, okay. So now we go to notice of proposed ordinances. There'll be no public discussion, and the council may ask staff for clarification on the proposed ordinance. So the first one is 8.1, Council Bill number 20-024, ordinance number 2916.
I would like a presentation.
Okay, so with that, since Mandy is not here, I believe Mr. Cruz Ramos will make that presentation. Cruz, can I have you talking to the mic, please, and state your name, please?
Cruz Ramos, Economic Development Specialist for the Economic Development Department. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. And because it's been quite a while since I've been here, thanks. What we'd like to bring before the council is Natural Relief LLC has applied for LIDA project, and the New Mexico Economic Development Department. New Mexico Economic Development Department investment, and indeed that is the case. There's a significant investment on the part of the company, that being Natural Relief LLC. The use of LIDA funds typically include the purchase, lease, construction, improvement, or acquisition of land, buildings, or infrastructure. Funds in this particular case would be those related to capital improvements, purchase of equipment associated with the business that they're in, and I'll touch on that in a moment. Public works improvements, reimbursement basis is how LIDA projects operate. They spend money on the equipment they need in order to run the business, and we reimburse them over time for those investments, for those capital improvements. And they, of course, need to have some form of security, often a bank-type security, a letter of credit, something along those lines, in order to, something that we would, if necessary, claw back. These are typically not things that we want to do or that take place as we act on these applications. A little background on Natural Relief LLC. They are a grower, processor, and seller of CBD flower and extracts. Their manufacturing center would be on Baton Memorial West. They have a location there. Elsewhere in Barreno, about a half hour south, they've got a 42-acre hemp farm. that's been in existence since about June of last year. They actually have generated about 100,000 pounds, I believe, of crop and to date, and that they're expecting for that to increase as we speak. Expansion would include increased crop yields over time. That's how they'll lead a project, and the funds that are going toward it, committed by the state principally, that's what they would go toward. Processing and packaging of other growers' products as well as their own. So other similar types of companies in the area, in the region, would also benefit in that natural relief would be actually working on processing, reselling, redistributing other firms' crops. There would be a construction and a build-out of greenhouses, infrastructure associated with that, electrical, other buildings, and the wholesale and distribution expansion will include, again, reselling in New Mexico as well as outside of the state. The point at which, over time, they actually become an economic-based company will be determined by the percentage of product that they're able to sell out of state, which should be a majority of their sales. We're hoping that'll happen. The New Mexico Economic Development Department has committed $600,000 toward the LEADER project. It's also vetted the business and that it's reviewed its financials, as have we, the City of Las Cruces. They've conducted and commissioned actually a third-party economic impact report on the project. And so you're aware it's looking forward to about, over the next 10 years, about an estimated $547,000 in GRT alone, and about $256,000 over the next 10 years in economic output. In other words, the kind of output and the impact that it would have on the City of Las Cruces overall. The city's contribution will be to act as the fiscal agent for the project, which means that we'll serve as the conduit for the receipt of funds from the state, making those funds available to the business over time as it makes purchases of equipment, and will also be, as we do with other LEADER projects and have in the past, monitoring the progress of the project, making certain that they hit their milestones in terms of hires. They're looking at and have committed through a project participation agreement with both the state and with the city to the creation of 55 full-time positions, full-time jobs. All told, by the end of 2023, by the end of that calendar year, December 31st, 2023. Salary ranges are going to run, with a couple of exceptions, somewhere between $34,000 and $54,000. Highest salary line is for the operations director, who would be the individual running the entire concern, making about $80,000. But otherwise, the average would be somewhere along $36,000, $37,000. The Barino farm is another element that we're not touching on here that's outside of city limits, but obviously there would be employment with respect to the farm there over time. And the investment on the part of the company would be about $5.3 million, with the state's financial support with respect to the LEADER project. We're looking at 5.9, just under $6 million overall, that would be put into this particular project. Again, this is a business expansion on their part. So you're aware of some of the products. Again, we're looking at extracting CBD from hemp on the farm, and this would go into the creation of lotions, salves, some products with medicinal utility, oils, bath bombs. Please don't ask me what that is. I have no idea what a bath bomb is. Canned bud, yet another example of something I'm not entirely... I can imagine what it might be, but I'm not certain. Body scrubs Okay. So, and I leave it at that.
Yeah, this is just for, thanks, Bruce. Good presentation. Now, the other, this is just for our information.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you.
May I ask him a question? Sure. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Cruz. It was an excellent presentation.
Thank you, Councilor.
You're welcome. Insofar as the salary range, it was stated on the visual that it's between, was it 35 and
34, 37, thereabouts.
yeah, and up to about 50 in the mid-50s. So my question, but then later you said average, and I hate averages because you can have someone making $100,000 a year and then someone making minimum wage, which wouldn't add up to $34,000 a year. So is this salaries range 34K through 54K an average or a range? So
the average would be I ran the numbers the other day. The average would actually be something like 34,475.
So what would be the lowest pay based on your numbers?
Based on the economic impact report, the lowest pay, and the numbers there were if I recall correctly, 1 or 2, 24,000. But it's overwhelmingly mid-30s. Overwhelmingly mid-30s. What would skew it upwards would be the 54,000, which is, I think, like the supervisor that would have certain responsibilities, overarching responsibilities, and then above and beyond that $80,000 figure for the operations director. But the average is actually 34,475.
Okay, so if I heard correctly, there are a few positions at the very low end
very
of
few,
24,000, but very few. Thank you very much for that information. I'm glad
Thank
we
you,
had that.
Councilor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cruz. So do we bring this forward? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Abeta-Stuvi, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you. For the positions that were in the 24,000 range, do you know if that was a part-time job or for full-time work?
Yeah, with respect, I'm afraid I don't have a ready answer for that.
Okay.
Mayor, Council Member Abeta-Stuvi, Grisela Martinez, Economic Development Director. We don't have that information. However, the LIDA projects are evaluated in full-time jobs. And so that's one of the requirements or full-time job equivalents.
And would that, if it was for a full-time job, would that meet our requirements for minimum wage?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Everything with the state and the city has to meet the requirements for minimum wage.
Okay. I think that's it, Cruz. But I wouldn't sit down if I were you. I'd still stand. Councilor Sorg?
Bring it forward.
Okay, bring it forward. Okay, and next one is 8.2, Council Bill number 20-025, ordinance number 2917.
Bring it forward.
Bring it forward. David, did you have something you wanted to say? Oh.
No, sir.
Oh, okay. Okay, so before we go to comments, need to clarify something. So apparently it's been determined that Mayor Pro Tem Gandara sits on one too many PRCs. So she has agreed to either give up a health or quality of life, depending on which council member would like to take her place on those. So just to clarify, under the health PRC, we have Councilor Abeta-Stuvi, Flores, and Gandara. So she can either give that one up, or under the quality of life, we have Gandara, Vasquez, and myself. So,
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to take quality of life as well.
You're okay. You want to take quality of life? Okay. So we got that then. Got that, Dave? Great. 3.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, you're limited by 3 on the policy review committees for each of the council, but that does not include select committees. Those are 2 separate portions of the ordinance.
Okay. Okay. So now we go to council comments, and I've got a lot of them. So I had given you all...
Mr. Mayor, I want to ask the city attorney a question.
Sure.
I just want to clarify or see if I understood this correctly, Attorney Vega Brown. So my understanding is that we, because it's OMA announced and all that sort of stuff, the non-voting members of the city council may attend, are allowed to attend those meetings. Am I correct?
Mayor and Council, yes, that's correct. We are in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, so anybody can attend.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so let's see here. Let's start off with, I gave you all passed out, and I'll just read it. It says, many of you know Mr. Trump has taken action to repeal environmental regulations that limit pollution from power plants and automobiles and replace them with much weaker regulations. Basically, there's been a major lawsuit filed by 23 state attorney generals, including New Mexico AG Hector Balderas and 7 cities against the power plant changes. And we have an opportunity to join an amicus brief supporting that suit, coordinated by the Sabin Center for Climate Change Law at Columbia University. I believe Albuquerque and Santa Fe will be planning on joining the brief, as well as Phoenix and and Tempe, which is a lawsuit against lowering the automobile pollution standards, which we believe the administration will be filing in a few months. So if you all agree, I'd like for our city legal office to review the information that I provided and prepare a resolution allowing us to participate in that amicus brief. No, if we're good, I mean, unless someone strongly objects. Councilor?
Mayor, I do have a question for Attorney Vega Brown. I don't know how many amicus briefs she's working on right now, but in terms of capacity and things related to being able to carry some of these lawsuits forward, just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Mayor and Council, we can join an amicus at any time. We've actually joined about 10 because it's the same subject matter. So whenever I get an email, I'm on a certain email list. Whenever I receive an email, especially from the County of Los Angeles to join, because it's something that you have already indicated that you have an interest in joining, I notify the city manager and the mayor, get their approval for that, just to make sure that we're consistent with the will of the city council, and we join. There doesn't need to be a resolution or anything unless you want to have a resolution in support of, but we join frequently.
Thank you. No, I agree with this one. I just wanted to make sure we weren't just placing all these undue burdens on your office.
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
I'd like to ask a question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attorney Vega Brown, so I too had the same thought about the city attorney's office being overburdened with amicus briefs. So when you do those, do you sign on or do you submit a brief that's consistent with the original plaintiff?
Mayor and Council, it's actually quite simple. We just sign on their brief. We review their brief and make sure that we're in approval. The only brief that we've been asked to provide any information is the most recent brief that Councilor Vasquez was referring. We've asked to review it and to add in just a little bit of information. It's really not overburdensome. We just review it and read it. We are very confident in the abilities of the council that is moving forward, especially some of the larger cities.
Thank you so much for your work. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. That means me. Okay. Where are we at on the agenda? Oh, Mayor, it's you. You're up.
We're going to...
Not paying attention. I'm trying to get my stuff together here.
That's all right. So a couple things. One, I just wanted to, I'm sure all of you have been hearing about the coronavirus, and I just wanted to, two things. We're going to, and I don't know if the battalion chief, deputy chief is could say a few things, but I know the county is going to have a discussion on it on the 10th And I was thinking that they're coordinating with the state. And I was thinking that if we could I want it to be on the same song sheet. So one of the things that, of course, this is something that's important and something that we need to address, but we also need to let the public know that, there are things that we feel that, if the precautions are taking place, we understand that it affects directly about 2% of the people, but that's still 2% too many. And nonetheless, I think it's important that we let the residents know that we're aware of it, and we're working with the various partners in health to make sure that we have contingent plans in case something was to happen. So that's really all I wanted to mention, and that'll be at our March 9th work session. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, I also asked for another work session on May 11th, so we can start putting in steps to achieve the implementing of the comprehensive plan, the Elevate Las Cruces. There are a few things there that I think that we can do to just begin the process. Also, I'm going to be asking, and I believe it's going to be either next Monday or the following Monday, for a closed session on real estate regarding a large-scale mixed-use infill type housing. Okay, and regarding the El Paseo corridor task force, we failed to mention, or I failed to mention, I think someone had brought up that if we go to the convention center, they wanted to be able to go to places where the students are and such. So it's my understanding that just a little bit past the convention center at Joe Skeen Hall, there are 2 stops. One stop goes to the student housing, another stop goes to the Pan Am parking lot. So instead of maybe going to the convention center, or maybe, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think it's important that that be incorporated, so then they have access to those 2 other places. So far, what I wanted to do was kind of clarify a few things here on the membership. So we still have each of you with your representative appointments. Make sure David Armiel is on there, someone from the Roadrunner staff, other staff, city staff if they deem necessary. I wanted to reach out to a young man named Justin Bannister, NMSU vice president, and so he can coordinate with the chancellor's office. And then I was thinking it probably wouldn't hurt to have someone from the MPO. They were just an additional thing. Sherry Thomas, Las Cruces Public Schools, and a businessman approached, and he was out in the audience, Mr. Jake Redfern. They're interested in helping. They have a lot of property there and can be substantial if we have to do some things and they need a particular support. A lot of their landowners own that property, and I think they could be. All right, that's all I have. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned earlier, I was thrilled to participate in the opening of the DePostali Hall, the NMSU's Art Museum. It was fantastic. From the outside, it doesn't appear to be a large, but when you go in, there's all these amazing spaces to do woodworking and steel and metal work, and then you have the actual the art, and it's fantastic, and so it was interesting. They did a live sort of demonstration, and one of the young ladies from the city did a whole series of art as it relates to motherhood, and I thought it was fantastic. And so what I was most thrilled about is just there were so many people of all walks of life, very diverse group of people, and I think that's what art and music, as I made mention, does. It's sort of in a time when we're so polarized for our political views and such. It was a real opportunity to come together and celebrate art. And then I went on Mayor's behalf to the New Horizons Symphony, with Jorge Martinez Rios, the music director and conductor, and it's a Sister Cities concert with the orchestra of Torreon. It was amazing to see. It was standing room only. I mean, the lady who is responsible for the facility had to come out and say, can you please make sure that the entry and exit ways are not blocked up because of fire hazard and that kind of thing. So it got me to thinking about any other venues that I think we can look into as it relates to having something like this. And although I know there was a lot of organizing and of funding and whatnot, I'm thinking about the plaza. Although I wouldn't have liked to be at the plaza yesterday evening, it was a little windy and such, but it got me to thinking about how to use the plaza for our youth, because and inviting sort of our different high schools and middle schools to perform there in terms of music, and still just trying to attempt to get people to the downtown and to the plaza. So with that, let's see. I've had a busy 2 weeks. Our resilience leaders met on Friday. I had over 50 people participate. We're now really drilling down and getting into the data for each of the 10 survival and thriving communities. We're really looking at how that data can influence policy, and people are starting really to make the connections about how important housing is, and food insecurity, and access to the healthcare, behavioral health, and whatnot. So that leads me to the next thing that I participated this morning in, is the Summit for the Engage Partnership. There was some real, through Lori Martinez, another collective impact model that has been going on for at New Mexico State University, yeah. And so one of the things that, as Erica Sorovia was talking about the data, which got me to thinking, is this idea of, and we speak of it a lot around economic development, but ensuring that there's connections. As all of you know, our high school graduation rate in Doña Ana County Las Cruces is the highest in the state. It's about at 86%. And but some of the data that she shared, whether good, bad, or indifferent, was about the test scores. And we all know that we feel like our kids are being over-tested. But one of the things that struck me was that we still continue to have, our kids continue to languish in reading and math. Severely, like in the 80% of kids not reading at grade level, not having the math skills and whatnot. And so just really pushing the group to look at data in a way that is meaningful to us. And so the afternoon session was going to be about looking at the data and then visioning what those goals and objectives are going to be collectively for the entire county as it relates to early education. And the other thing that struck me as we're looking at providing LEDA funding and different things is that many of our parents do not have a high school education, even a diploma, and what that is doing for our economy, and the kinds of things that we should be really partnering with other groups about in terms of raising sort of parents up, right, and giving them opportunities to go to school, getting possibly their GED, their high school diploma, a training, a trade of some sort. And so it was amazing work there, and I've appreciated Lori Martinez and the group in terms of what she's doing. And if I could just put in a plug, as part of our strategic planning is working towards getting a museum, a children's museum, and being a one-stop shop, which I know, Councilor Beta, you're very
involved and familiar with, and just having children, right? And making sure that we give our parents and our kids every opportunity. Next is I met with the judge as it relates to this past week. I call him Judge Fernando Macias, the county manager, about the idea of starting a behavioral health district as part of my charge that mayor has charged me with doing. And so it was a great conversation. I think he's very much interested in really trying to have a continuum of services from start to finish for people who are mentally ill, substance abusers, or addicted. And so we got to talking about the triage center. And from him, he wants to make it very clear that he wants the triage center to go back to its original intent, and that is to assist law enforcement, right? When we've picked up people for lower level crimes, maybe having to do with substance use and or addiction and mental health, that there's a space, a place that they can automatically drop off folks, right? But in a very safe way so that we can assess folks and get them to the proper place in our spectrum of services. And then to also have a reentry program, and a reentry program in that people that are being assessed and re-entering back into the community with services, wraparound services. So I was very grateful to hear that. He's working with a consultant. He hopes to get most of this ready to go, and hoping around the May and he was very open to getting the city very active and involved in these discussions. And so I did tell him there really isn't a place for us, that those discussions happen at county commission meetings, but lots of times the city they're not, staff and or the council isn't being alerted to some of that stuff. And so we talked about the opportunity about, a joint work session maybe. Not just the Behavioral Health Council, but to really look at what our role in as a city as it relates to the triage center. So I know I'm taking a lot of time, but I thought this was all really, really important. The other thing that I wanted to make mention of is this idea of data and how we use data to support the work that we're doing, the programming, what the city's doing. And I've suggested at other times that the city look at a data specialist, an evaluator, someone that really can look at this data, synthesize the data, and then be able to tell us what the data says, and then giving us some more information about evidence-based programming that's happening nationally. So it got me to thinking. I was concerned about our analyst and who that might be, and really wanting to feel like one analyst isn't enough for the 7 of us. And really wanting to encourage the hiring of a couple of other analysts. I know that in talking with Mr. Studer, that you're in the process of hiring an analyst. And so I'm pitching to have at least 3 for us, so we can move to having I guess someone that can really help us sort of build policy, that does research but also gives us data, and helps us build sound policy. Let's see. Mayor, I'm glad you brought up the coronavirus. I too am very concerned about that. I feel there's some disconnects, and I want to reach out to our partners at the Department of Health. I'm sure they have lots of programming and planning that's taking place, but I'd like to encourage the city to use their podcasts and the channel to give lots of really good information to folks about the coronavirus, like an educational campaign, if you will. two more things. The Animal Services Center, I don't know if Councilor Flores, Madam Chair of our group, is going to make mention of this, but there was a lot of dialogue about having a joint work session. Mayor, you had made mention about moving the Animal Services Center board or services into the city. Thank you, Mr. Dallahan, for giving us a briefing of sort of where you started and where you landed as it related to the work that you've done to try to create a different, environment, like where you think the Animal Services Board could very easily attach itself to city government, but I don't think we're ready to do that quite yet. And so I'm looking for maybe a work session and to be held with the county as it relates to the possibilities of moving that over. Mayor, you had made mention about the El Paseo corridor and the task force. Who are you wanting to lead that in terms of moving towards gathering everybody together? I wasn't sure if we're waiting for somebody or who is going to do that.
As far as who I would like to be the chair, to be candid with you, probably former Mayor Pro Tem Sharon Thomas, since she was the one responsible for getting the blueprint, and then she's very familiar with transit, and I think she works well with David Armijo. But I'd like to be there to kick it off. But if you're talking...
So you're going to be the one to bring people together, invitations and all that?
Yeah,
okay, I just want to make sure that we have someone out working with staff. Okay. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Great. Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for the highlight of our most recent meeting of the Animal Services Center, that committee. I appreciate that. That was really the highlight of the meeting. So on Saturday morning, I don't know how many of you wake up to KRWG. I do. But I was really glad that I mistakenly put my alarm on, set it off, and because the Commonwealth Club was talking about ACEs, and they didn't name the authors of the book, but the Commonwealth Club has these wonderful topics, and the topic was on ACEs, and the composition of that particular group panel included, it was actually focusing on what UC San Francisco Med Center is doing on behavioral health and the trauma that children undergo. And what was interesting is that Patrick Kennedy, who's of the Kennedy clan and nephew of Sergeant Shriver, who was actually back in the day in the 60s, really talked about mental health issues and how we had to address them. And so Patrick Kennedy has been at the forefront of this movement, and all of the panelists, there was one panelist who was actually, anyway, it was just very wonderful, excuse me. And anyway, it was wonderful, and if any of you want to hear what is really, it's not just something that, I think it's wonderful that the authors of ACEs are from New Mexico. And here's a book, because I'm going to read to you. And, but anyway, so maybe you can go online and get it. It was Saturday, February 29 at 7 a.m. And, I think it was the NPR at KRWG. So, and the other book I would like to recommend, I feel like I have a friend, Alice, who's always recommending books wherever she goes. But this one is very, very, when I bought it 4 years ago and met the author, it seemed as if it wasn't that important. But today, it is very, very important. And it was important then, actually, because it was published in 24 years ago, 2014. And the focus of the book is based on, he works it up to discuss the Shelby v. Holder case. It's Shelby County in Alabama versus Holder. That was the Attorney General at the time. And the case pretty much gutted, it didn't pretty much, it definitely gutted the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And the way it was set up in 1965 was that it had to be renewed like every 5 years. And so at the commemoration of Bloody Sunday, which was on March 7, 1965, they, the Voting Empowerment Committee or Education Committee used the words of Martin Luther King in that he, when they were fighting so hard to get that Voting Rights Act, because what happens with that is that the reason for the Voting Rights Act, and one of my friends was actually an attorney who brought it before the Supreme Court and won when he was trying to enforce it. But that part has been, it doesn't exist anymore. It has been eliminated. And the reason is because we have a very important election coming up, and I'm a voter registration agent, and I'm trying to encourage everyone who to become a voter registration agent. You don't have to be 18 years old. High school students can register people, and you can go to the county clerk's office to get your number and get educated. It's 30-minute educationals on what your duties are and the do's, the do's and the don'ts of being a VRA. But I was at a meeting the other day, and someone was talking about how she had just moved to Las Cruces from Arizona, and I happened to have my packet on me, so I did that. So I encourage everyone to become a VRA. You can't in any way discuss politics or political affiliation, and other than that, it's so easy to do. And it's just important that we especially have our county. I'm collecting data on how many people we have and how many people are registered to vote. And they, absent citizenship and the ability to register to vote. And gathering that data is not too difficult, but it's in the making. So So let me read to you from Anna, age 8, and here, good government leadership as a critical tool. We also believe in the power of all local communities to be equal partners in a healing process. We invite you to enter a conversation with us to explore a variety of interconnected challenges and to critically analyze how we are raising our children in this culture at this time in history. When we say, quote, ending childhood trauma, end quote, we mean all children, whether living in city centers, rural hamlets, suburbs, mansions, housing projects, or homeless shelters. The biggest question is this: do we collectively want to solve the epidemic of trauma, or do we keep asking families to solve this problem on their own? We tell stories over 10 chapters that coalesce into a single guide for action. The beginning of our book may be the most challenging, as it asks you to witness and confront the consequences of trauma, something some of our early reviewers described as the equivalent as being doused with a bucket of cold water. Trust that the chapters will weave together to empower the reader from whatever vantage point one sits. And I would like to add, and that's it for today, that's all I'm reading today, but I would like to add that for me, it was like a bucket of ice, dumping ice. It wasn't cold water. It was like being shocked, by having a bucket of ice thrown on me, dumped on me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Sorg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would like to make a comment on something I just received today. It is related to what we just approved an amicus brief for the regulations that limit pollution from power plants and automobiles. This was a message from the National League of Cities, the committee that I'm on, have been on now for going on third year. The EPA is accepting comments to propose revisions to the National Environmental Policy Act, that's NEPA, that makes the environmental assessments and the environmental impact statements and so forth. What the administration, the occupant of the White House is trying to do is a few things. The local elected officials are good stewards of the environment. We want to make sure we tell them that and how important NEPA is to our environment. Problems the local governments that might have with these changes, one of the changes they want to do is streamline the process a little bit so it doesn't take so long, and that's possibly something they could do. However, it's not going to work so well if we're going to have a shoddy work in the NEPA process. And so we're concerned about reoccurring reviews, or excuse me, that's not it, cumulative effects that must take climate change into account, provisions that open the door to litigation against local governments. So we're recommending that they be careful on what they do, and I pointed out to our staff in Washington, D.C. that the waiving of the NEPA process for the border wall that's trying to be built is something that we are also very concerned about. And so I got an answer back from our staff in Washington today saying, thank you, we forgot about that part. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Bencomo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, everyone. You know, it's been a busy couple of months as a new councilor. Councilors Beta, Stuvie, and I have been doing a lot of onboarding with a lot of different departments, and I'm incredibly grateful and thankful for the city manager setting all that up and everyone having incredible presentations for us. I particularly want to thank in the last 2 weeks, I visited both with the fire department and the police department. I did a ride-along with both departments. So I want to specifically thank the crew over at Fire Station 3, specifically Lieutenant Gabe Sanchez and his crew, as well as Battalion Chief Michael Daniels. They gave me a pretty great ride along. It was my first time in a fire truck. That was pretty exciting. But I'm excited for them to get their new firehouse. It's much needed and much deserved. But I feel really, really thankful for their service to our city, especially to the neighborhoods of District 4. And then, of course, I also want to thank the police department and chief for setting that up for me, specifically Lieutenant Bradley and more specifically Officer Oscar Magallanes, who took me around. Unfortunately, I happened to be in the ride-along when the incident on Lowman occurred last week, so it was interesting, I will say the least. But very much, you know, I got to see a very good sort of firsthand, upfront and personal to what both of these jobs are, and it's certainly something that it's very new to me, and I've discovered that I am not an adrenaline junkie. So, but thank you so much to both chiefs for setting that up and for allowing us to do something like that. You know, if any of you have not done that, I would highly recommend that you do, or maybe even if you haven't done it in a long time, to request for that. I'm looking forward to doing a ride along with Paul Ford as well. I think that for me as a social worker, that's going to be something really important. This weekend, I, along with actually the mayor and Chief Enriquez, participated in what's called the Young Achievers Forum. It's put on at the university for 6th grade students from across southern New Mexico, really, Doña Ana County. There were students there from Alamogordo, from the base, from, was Deming there? I can't remember.
Deming, Hatch, and even El Paso.
Yeah, so it was a bunch of sixth graders, these young leaders in their schools, and I got to teach them about public service, community organizing, and how to make a difference in their communities through an organizing model. And it was really interesting when I asked we each presented to 5 different groups of like 15 students or so throughout the morning. And when I asked them to share with me what issues they wanted to share, they would like to see change in their communities, they brought up really different things, but pretty consistently they brought up the need for better parks. They brought up, these are sixth graders, okay? They brought up climate change and pollution as a really important issue to them. They brought up gun violence in schools as an important issue to them. And so, there is these young sixth graders that often we think of them as just these kids, right? And of course they don't have problems. Of course they don't see the heaviness of the world, and they're carrying it around. And it just takes someone to ask them, hey, what would you like to see differently in change in your communities? And I very much see them as, we often think of them as the leaders of the future, but I very much see them as the leaders of right now. And it's really incumbent upon us to listen, to take them seriously, and to act. We're the ones in these positions that are able to do that. And I just, I really wanted to lift that up because there was just these little sixth graders, and they were raising up some pretty adult, serious issues. And so I was really thankful to do that. I'm happy to submit your names for next year's Young Achievers Forum if you want to do that. I certainly had a really good time. I think that's it. Honestly, actually, the last thing I do want to, I would love to have a conversation with the county manager, city manager, Bill Studer, and perhaps the two chiefs, Chief Enriquez and Chief Gallagher, around, first responders resiliency programs, mental health programs. I think this is a conversation we're having as a city, but I think it's critical and necessary that we have it internally as well. In my conversations with both of the crews that I got to be with during my ride-along, we actually talked a lot about the stuff that our first responders take home, the things they just can't leave at the door. And I think it's, I keep wondering, well, should I bring this up or not? And maybe if I don't, it might not come up. And so maybe there's already something in place. If there is, how do we make it stronger? How do we make it better for both, mental health education, mental health services for both our first responders and their families? I think it's really something that, as a city, that we should be leading on. So that's it for me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick update. So I do have March 28th as the date for the community fishing event at Young Pond. Thank you to the Las Cruces Police Department and Lieutenant Daines for helping to organize that. And that'll be an opportunity for the community to come out from 9 to 12, fish with veterans, members of our law enforcement, other community members with their families. So that's all I'll say for today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Abeyta-Stuvey.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councilor Bencomo said it best. We've been onboarding and seeing all the different departments. It's been very insightful, and I've really appreciated the city manager and all the staff for being able to do that. One quick reminder that on March 7th, we will be having the opening of the new community schools for Booker T. Washington, MacArthur, and Doña Ana. I believe everybody's been sent invitations to those, so I'd love to see everyone there. Animal Service Board was already covered. I would like to thank Officer Gonzalez and Officer Adrian Rodriguez from the police department. They were my ride-alongs, and it was very insightful. I also agree with Councilor Bencomo. I'd love to look to see what type of services we provide for our officers and their families. Oftentimes what they see, it can be cumulative trauma in the end, and they see a lot of our world. And we attended lots of different cases and experiences, so it was very insightful. I will be going again this summer, because I hear the summertime is very different than the fall. So I look forward to getting those scheduled later on. And I think my last thing is, as I have been going to look about board appointments, an interesting question came up. And that I had noticed there is a vacancy with our ADA board. And I have a very willing participant of it, but they are a parent of a child who's disabled. However, as the way the law is written right now, there is no room on the board for them to sit because they are not the disabled person. It's their child. So I think it's just something to consider later on and see if there's an exception that can be made, just so that we can get a really well-rounded view and get that perspective as well on those types of boards.
Thank you, Councilor. If you wouldn't mind, drop me an email, and then maybe we can look at seeing, bringing it up to council for a possible revision to that, to include.
Thank you.
Yeah. So to you and Councilor Bencomo, did you guys ride with the officers or the supervisors when you guys were with the police?
Officers.
So Chief, I don't know. I always, when I go, I'm with the supervisors, and we see no action, or by the time we get there,
I saw
it's already
tons of
done.
action.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
My kudos to you, Councilor Abita Stuvi. I don't know if I could do another one. I was really stressed out. I'm not going to lie to you.
By the time we get there, everybody's already there.
Well, after
I want to be chasing them. So
after Councilor Bencomo's events, I then had to wear a bulletproof vest for my second ride along.
All right. Before I get to the city manager's report, I was going to ask if Barbara De Leon can just run us by what you're envisioning Wednesday to be, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Barbara De Leon, Interim Assistant City Manager. So on Wednesday, we will have 2 sessions with your consultant that you engage to assist you with the recruitment process for the next city manager. We will have both an open meeting and a closed meeting. In the open meeting, we will cover the process to date for the search, the advertisement, the posting of the position, the selection of top candidates, just the process that brought us to where we are. We will go over logistics for the on-site interviews that will be happening at a later date, so that you can determine how you would like to structure those and any particular elements that you would like to include in the interviews, and then we'll go over a general timeline. That's all in the open meeting. From there, we will proceed to the closed meeting with the recruiter, and you will be able to discuss the top candidates who have been named in the closed meeting notice for that session.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. Okay, so now we're going to go to the city manager's report. Bill?
Mayor, I have 2 things I need to read into the record. We had 2 bond sales over the last 2 weeks, and I just want to read in the details of them. We had a joint utilities refunding issue that Stiefel Nicholas did for us. The par value of the bonds was $12,825,000. The final maturity is June 1st of 2027. The net effective interest rate of those bonds is 1.17%. The present value of the savings is 8.41%, or $1.5 million roughly. The second sale was SSGRT refunding bonds. Hilltop Securities did that issue. The par value was $15,435,000. The final maturity was June 1st of 2039, almost a 20-year issue. The net effective interest rate of the bonds was 2.21%. The present value savings was 22.4%, which is huge. And the net savings from the transaction was $4.3 million, which also is pretty substantial. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, if there's nothing further, then entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Sorg, second by Councilor Vasquez, that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We're adjourned. It's 4:56 p.m. Thanks.